Testing 1, 2, 3.
One, we're ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Morning. On behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, the City Commission, Manager Fuentes, and staff, welcome to the business meeting of the City Commission of the City of Truth and Consequences. It is now 9:04. I apologize for the late start. On January 10th, 2018, if you have any device that is going to be disruptive to this meeting, if you could please shut off the ringer, we would appreciate it. Madam Clerk, can we have roll call, please?
Honorable Steve Green.
Here.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead. Here. Honorable Kathy Clark is absent. Honorable Ralph Heschler.
Here.
Honorable Joshua Frankel.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you, and please, Madam Clerk, let the record show that Commissioner Clark did get in touch with me, and unfortunately, she will be unavailable to reach us telephonically during the meeting, so we appreciate that. Please join me in 15 seconds of silent meditation. Thank you. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item is approval of the agenda. I will need a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the agenda of January 10th, 2018 as submitted.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
I will second.
Second, Commissioner Frankel. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Item C, comments from the
Mr.
public.
Mayor,
Commissioners.
you want to have a special recognition?
Sure. Just 1 second.
So we don't need the time.
We don't have time on this one. Manager Fuentes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, we do have a special recognition that I'd like to call our chief up to the podium.
Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, City Manager. On December 1st, I took over the police department as interim chief. Since then, I've been tasked with the day-to-day operations of the police department and organizing the impending operations plan for the new animal shelter and preparing to continue moving forward with the law enforcement complex project. In the past 5 days, in the past 5 weeks, my daily plate has been full, to say the least. However, my job was made much easier with the assistance of then Sergeant Erica Baker. Since day one, Sergeant Baker approached me and asked me how she could help. I assigned her tasks, and extra duties which she accepted without hesitation. She would complete what I asked her to do and would come back for more. It has been a blessing to have Sergeant Baker as my assistant, and I look forward to working with her in the future. A couple of weeks ago, Sergeant Baker was promoted to the rank of lieutenant, a position that she has earned and well deserves. At this time, I want to first congratulate you and thank you for a job well done. At this time, her father, Mo Cordova, and her husband, Joshua Baker, will pin her collar rank at this time.
Well, Chief, before, we do would like to call, the pastor to come down and please say a prayer.
Dudley Bristow, pastor of First Baptist Church, Mayor Pro Tem, city councilors, and fellow citizens. Erica asked me to come and pray a short prayer for her this morning. I just want to say thank you to all the law enforcement officers in our area and all those that put their lives in danger every day to protect us. I say we support you. Let us all bow in prayer, if we would, at this time. Almighty God, watch over all law enforcement officers. Protect them from harm in the performance of their duty. And Father, bring them back safely with their families after duty has ended. As Joshua chapter 1 verse 9 says, be strong and courageous, for the Lord will be with you wherever you go. Bless the ones, Father, who wear the badge. Oh Lord, today we honor those. But especially today, it's an honor to honor Lieutenant Erica Baker of the Truth or Consequences New Mexico Police Department, as she serves the community she loves. She is a great lady, a wife, a mother, and she's a great policewoman. Oh Lord, help her dedication to her job, to do it well. Hold her firmly in your care. Lord, keep this community safe. Grant Erica wisdom and always keep her in your loving arms. We ask these in Jesus Christ, our Savior's name. Congratulations, Lieutenant Erica Baker. May God bless you, and may God bless this great city of Truth or Consequences. Amen.
Amen.
Love you.
Thank you, Pastor Bristow, and congratulations, Lieutenant Baker. Thank you. Okay, number C, that's a great interruption. I wish we had more of those at our agendas to honor outstanding achievements in work. Item C, comments from the public. The 3-minute rule applies. If you want to have any information made part of the proceedings, please put them in the black box next to the microphone. State your name, your address, keep on point, and you have 3 minutes.
Turn off your cell phones.
Mr. Oshbach. If you can leave, you just leave up there. We'll you know, this is your time. You're
Good morning, Commissioners. Just a couple things I'd like to bring up. One is I just handed out the May 10th, 2011 minutes where Financial Director Juan Fuentes became before the Commission to get a 1/4% tax for the Police Department. And it just reads, Juan Fuentes, Finance Director, came before the Commission with an ordinance to get the 1/4% tax. Commissioner Steve Green stated he thinks it is important that this restricted money, if this passes, goes for public safety and cannot be used for anything else. On June the 14th, Commissioner Torres asked how much money that would it generate, and Finance Director Fuentes said about $275,000 a year. And these funds would be used for, and it was specific, for the Police Department, for additional personnel, salary and benefits, enhancements, equipment and vehicles, not an old building. These people deserve the best. We are very underpaid compared to other police departments. If you guys want to, depending on the vote, want to pass another 1/4% tax, to build a building or remodel that building, then do it. But this money that you want to spend on this old armory building has been allocated for money for the police department in salaries, benefits, extra personnel, and I'm sure Mr. Apodaca will agree that he needs some help. And he's lost, I think, 2 officers in the last 2 or 3 weeks. We've lost the chief, and we lost Officer Morgan. We're in a bind down here. I just wanted to point that out, what this money was exactly for. Then the other thing I want to just bring up real quick is, again, the streets are filthy. There's trees and weeds all over all the streets. You can go down any single alley. It's ruts, garbage, trees, big pieces of brush. They need to be cleaned up. The houses in every bit of the town are undervalued because we are not keeping up our basic infrastructure in streets and alleys. It hurts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Oshkosh.
I'd like to say just one other thing. I am not associated with Ron Finn. Period.
Carolyn?
Carolyn Casares, TRC. Commissioners, how can the city government go on pretending the city is so rich as to be able to afford an expensive showplace police station when the sad truth is we are so poor we can't afford to fix our water pipes, our streets, and have our own landfill? This is the consequences of poor city management. People, the truth can be found out, but we have to look for it. Examine both sides. Has this long tradition of city mismanagement put you to sleep with boredom? Wake up. Pay attention to what is going on around you. This is a challenge. Take back your power. The truth is that our tax dollars allocated for public safety can be reallocated toward true public safety to serve all of TRC with more basic necessities than a new police force. The truth is there will be added tax burden because full disclosure is not forthcoming, and construction costs always exceed the estimate. Vote against on January 23rd. People, this problem may not be our fault, but it is now our responsibility. Register to vote. If we don't change our city government, things will continue as usual. Is that good news? Pray for a righteous judgment and conclusion to benefit the highest good for all of TRC, and vote against on January 23rd. By the way, the expense of this special election is not Ron Finn. The commissioners chose not to include this on the March ballot. They forced the special election. Thank you.
Excuse me. I understand that the people who will be talking, and they will be representing your thoughts, and there are other people in the audience who will not be represented by their own thoughts. This is not the gymnasium where we're applauding good deeds and bad deeds. This is an opportunity that the commission has set aside, and past and future commissions, I'm quite sure, will continue to set aside an opportunity for the public to express their concerns. This is a business meeting, and applause disrupts that meeting. So I'd appreciate it if you would hold that back. Mr. Trujillo.
Happy New Year, everybody. Been a long time since I've been up here, and I don't even know where to start. 3 minutes is not enough, but First off, Ariel Daughtery lost her husband, and a lot of us probably aren't aware of that. So be especially kind when he's here next time. Steve, your remarks just now, I've been really dismayed at how you personally have been attacking a person hard on issues, soft on people. Let's talk about the issues. It's really important to do that. It's unbecoming of a commissioner to attack a citizen. It just is. Shouldn't do that. You're supposed to be listening, input from everybody. And I know you try, and I know it must be very difficult because I know you take a lot of very hard hits and sometimes not deserved. But you got to rise above that. You're our leaders. You know, you've been elected to lead us. Your financial responsibilities that you have are great. The amount of money we're paying on this building, if we do build it or we renovate it, is not insignificant. It's going to lessen the ability of this city to deal with the infrastructure problems that we have. Randy just pointed out, you had money set aside specifically for the police department. You know, your police department, your department heads should be running their budget. They don't have that authority here. They're not said, okay, you get this much money this year, and you have to deal with that amount of money. They don't run their budgets. You know, in the federal government, it doesn't work that way. You know, when I was in the federal government, I was told how much money our department had, and I had to deal with that. And I was responsible for that. I was managing not only resources, people, but financially. We don't have that authority here. It's all vested in the mayor, city manager, I'm sorry. And it shouldn't be that way. You're paying people a certain amount of money to manage that department. Allow them to do so. I mean, I was happy. A couple of years ago, Juan is now having city managers present budgets, and that's a really big step, but it's not enough. They got to manage their departments. The police department building, I should say, I think is a huge, huge mistake. We need to deal with other problems that the city has. I personally toured it. I took a lot of pictures. We're not, there are things that need to be reorganized, but we don't need more space. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Sir, if you can just put it in the black box next to the microphone, appreciate it. Thank you. This way it will become part of the record. Just put them in the box, and the clerk will deal with it. The city clerk will deal with it, sir.
We'll get them in a little while.
We'll get them. Just put it, okay.
Good morning, Mayor Green and fellow commissioners. What I've sent is this to each and every one of you.
Could you state your name, sir, for the record?
I'm Harv Kleinsteiger, and this is what I've written to you. I would like to introduce myself as I'm a resident of Truth or Consequences and Elephant Butte since 1979. I'm Harvey Kleinsteiger. I live at 818 North Pershing here in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. I will be 86 years old in May. I play golf once or twice a week, and I'm sure that might help my good health. In recent years, I've seen our golf course go from being a very, very good golf course to being a very, very bad golf course. Just 3 years ago, the golf course was as good as any municipal golf course anywhere in the country. 3 years ago, the city decided to operate the golf course with a person that has very little knowledge of how a golf course should be run. With inexperience and only learning by making mistakes, the golf course continues to be a very poorly kept golf course. With a lack of water and continuing city support, One man working on the maintenance crew cannot do all the work that needs to be done. The city responsibility for the wells operating and keeping water on the golf course has been a big problem, even with the previous pro. Without professional running a golf course, we do not get people we do not get people playing from out of town, playing tournaments, staying in our hotels, buying groceries, food, etc., to keep the golf course in good condition. Saving money by not having a pro has really ended up costing us all a bunch. The golf course is in terrible condition and needs to be taken over by a person understanding how to maintain and grow grass. Reading a book is no way to learn to operate this golf course. Now, I know 3 minutes isn't very much, folks, but the cost to each and every one of us, we're property owners. We own that golf course. And when the golf course is a detriment to us, it costs us our property values and how much the city future visitors that come here do not play our city golf course anymore. They're playing at the lake, and I don't blame them. The lake golf course is being run properly. We need to look at how this golf course should be run. And I challenge each and every one of you commissioners to come with me and go and look at how bad the golf course is. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, sir. Ron?
Good morning, Commissioners, Mayor. Just a quick, I got a call yesterday morning.
Ron, just for the record, we know who
Ron
you are.
Corey,
But just,
PRC. I got a call yesterday morning from one of my golf buddies. And he says, do you know why the golf course is not open this morning?
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners, staff. My name is George Seghetti, live at 913 Spruce Street. And I would just like to punctuate these public comments with a little bit of good news. I wanted to report to you on our New Year's Eve Turtle Ascension, which we've now done for 3 years in a row. The attendance has more than doubled. The event is expanding. We're adding more activities as the number of volunteers permit. This year, we also did keep a guest register. We had 75 people sign on that register, and many of those were out-of-state visitors, and including a couple from Canada. Everyone who came down really enjoyed it. I wanted to thank Don Armijo and his staff for putting up all of the decorations, and the city for that wonderful venue, the Healing Waters Plaza, with the Christmas lights. It's just enchanting. I also wanted to thank John and Mary Ann Masterson for allowing us to use the brewery as part of the event. And really, the city has a great debt to those two people for coming in here, investing their time, their money in our town. The new brewery, it's a great asset, and it just goes to show what can happen when people come forward and take a positive effort and want to do something good for the community instead of just constantly attacking it. Thank you.
thank you.
Honorable Mayor and members of the Commission and City Manager, City Attorney and Chief, Lieutenant, congratulations. My name is Ike Eastfold. My wife Sharon and I reside at 1301 North Silver, and I wanted to give you an update on the progress of the Chihuahuan Desert Conservancy. We succeeded in purchasing 209.6 acres from Falls family on the 17th of October. We now own that. It is land between Smith and Cuchillo Negro, where it meets the Elephant Butte city limits, and roughly between True Value and Date and the rodeo grounds. It's a magnificent piece of natural property with wildlife, different plant communities, a sprinkling of archaeological sites, 2 major archaeological sites that we found so far. And it's just the plant communities of the Chihuahuan Desert are fully represented. So I think it's very, well, it borders the Truth or Consequences Elementary School. So the opportunity for educational use is just astronomical. And that is going to be one of the major purposes as far as we're concerned. Very close to the high school and the mid-school and the other schools in Tier C. So we're very pleased with that property. On the 28th of November, we were accepted as an affiliate into the Bountiful Alliance. And we're really grateful to be associated with those fine people in that organization. It's one of the really great parts of living here in Truth or Consequences. As landowners, we have to comply with legal requirements. And one of those, of course, is to precisely survey your boundaries and post them. And since that had not been done in a very long time on this property, we retained David Sen of Chaparral Surveying. And on December 4th, we went out with him to post our corners. And we succeeded in doing that, and we have an updated survey which has been registered with the assessor's office. We were dismayed to find an example of massive trespass on our property where the major canyon, which we call Falcon Canyon, comes down to the rodeo grounds. And we found eventually course markers that were left. There was an organized ATV event that trespassed on our property on November 11th. One of the course markers actually had the sign, the name of the event, and we were able to trace that down through the New Mexico Off-Road Vehicle Association website, and we know the promoter. So our property was used. I promise these folks, okay. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else like to,
Martin Michael, 721 Wyona. Number one, thank you for the 180 seconds to talk about this important and complicated issue. Number two, there's early voting going on right now for the, I call it Country Club Police Station. The ballot says the new police station costs $2.18 million plus interest, and over the 25-year mortgage, the taxpayers owe about $3.1 million. This is about $132,000 a year. We have not paid off the current police station. I guess they have 1 more year left of $100,000, so we will have to pay 2 mortgages this year. 3, the police do deserve a nice police station. And it's designed to have a sally port, a gym, bunk beds, showers, covered parking spaces, an expansive lobby for the public, a large meeting room for police training. We depend on our police. We need to support them. 4, the problem I have is that both our tax revenue and our population are declining. In addition, TOC, like all American cities, is in dire need of infrastructure replacement. We expect clean water to come from our faucets and our toilets to flush away waste. Most of these pipes are over 80 years old. They will not last much longer and are already costing the city a lot of money to patch together. This infrastructure replacement is not a glamorous project like the new police station. I could see it very possible that the pipes to the new police station, if it's built, will not bring in clean water, and the toilets and showers will not work because the pipes that go to the new police station won't be working. So last is number 5. Another problem with police spending is that every police chief has remodeled our 19-year-old current police station. An example is Chief Alvarez, who had to leave his contract early because he was sick. He was a very strong advocate for the new Country Club Police Station. The city commissioner approved of this police station, yet he, the old police chief, spent $100,000 in the current police station to make his office bigger. Why did he use taxpayer money to make his office bigger when the city council agreed to build a new police station? And why did Mr. Juan Fuentes agree to let the chief spend this money? Since this has become a pattern of remodeling the police station, even though it is not paid for, what is to prevent the future chief of police, all the future ones, to spend $100,000 every 2 years in this brand new $3.1 million police station? So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name's Mick Montgomery. I live at 505 Ivy Street. I want to start out thanking Erica Baker as and Chief right there for Erica's promotion. I tell you what, folks, we're very fortunate to have folks like that in our community and young people. Appreciate you. And for the Sheriff, thank you guys. You guys have your hands full. Thank you for all you do. Appreciate it. Not only that, it's nice to have prayer in the city commission meeting this morning. I think that was pretty cool. So what I'm here for today is to say this. I want to talk about, as Randy said, about the messes in the residential properties in Tier C. As Sandra and Randy and myself, we all grew up here in Tier C. I've been here since 1959. I've seen the residential properties and not so much commercial go downhill. And as a property owner and a person that my family wants to stay here, I'm concerned about that because of the property values. Not per se of the property values, but just having a nice looking community. And people's idea of these days is not to keep it up like we did when we were kids and we're adults now. And we need to do something about that. And I know Robbie and Susanna and Ray, they have their hands full. Maybe we need 2 or 3 more of them, but we need to have some backbone and to get some of this stuff taken care of. And I know they do the best they can. In turn, we got to look right across the street. We have things going on at our civic center, and we have to look across the street at that junk pile there on Foch and 4th Street right there. Right behind me, we got an old green motorhome sitting there. It's been there for 3-4 years, something like that, or not more. They put a license plate on it, big deal. I hadn't even ran it. The lady lives in California. Clean it up, clean it up. Just right down here, you got a block full of stuff. There are cars right there, just right down from here. Fortunately, up there on the north end of town, when people come into town, we have nice looking businesses. That's a plus. The next thing I want to say is about our streets. I'm running out of time. We need to do something with our streets. They're getting terrible. You go up here to Palo Verde, to Sierra Vista, they're just terrible. Street right down here, Foch Street in town, going to the City Hall is just terrible. We need to do something with our infrastructure to where when we get people in, especially young people, that they look and say, gosh, Tier C is just not a little poor place to live. Let's clean it up, folks. Let's act like we have some pride in our community. That's what we're here for. I love it here, and I know these young folks like it here. We have the lake, and let's keep it nice.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mayor Green and Commissioners. My name is Sharon Eastfold. I live at 1301 North Silver. It's my understanding that the City of Truth or Consequences is actively moving toward establishing an OHV use area, possibly within the city limits and on city land. If this is correct, there should be a full public disclosure and a public hearing. It's also my understanding that the city may have agreed with some adjacent private landowners to allow this OHV activities into their private land. I would like to bring some OHV injury statistics to the attention of the Commission. The graph on page 1, I'm sorry I don't have something to show the audience, shows that a significant number of these injuries are from ATVs. In addition, on page 2, young OHV riders are chronically at risk for fatal injuries. Just one liability judgment against the city could easily exceed what you had planned to spend on resurfacing the pool. I've recently done additional research that, these law firms show all that they've claimed on various ATV injuries, and it's like $225,000 for just one. And the kid, one just showed that the kid didn't have his parents' permission, and he ended up with a head injury. Anyway, these statistics come from the Consumer Product Safety Commission and a pediatric trauma registry, and I've listed the websites on my testimony. So I have some questions for you. Will the city create a memorandum of understanding with private landowners who want to support an OHV use area, informing them that the city will assume liability for any associated injury or damages on their land? 2, is the city of TRC prepared for the liability inherent with dangerous OHV activity and its statistically documented degree of injury and trauma? And finally, one of the things that appeals to my husband and I about TRC is this long-established identity as a place of healing and the arts and a nurturing community. So how would an OHV use area fit in with that identity? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners, and Truth or Consequences. Excuse me. I have to bring to attention an ad that was recently written in the Sentinel, which mimics a great deal of the information that has been falsely put out by the City Commission or never has been addressed by the City Commission. This ad is in support of this $3.3 million expenditure. Says that it is not a new tax. No, it is not a new tax, but it is a tax that was not designated for a public works project. Buildings within a community are considered public works projects, and as such, they have certain parameters that they have to follow in order to pass. One of them is getting approval of the community that's paying for them. This 25 years or 10 years or any expenditure that takes generations cannot be done by a simple ordinance written by a city commission of 5 without the approval of the people. Every 2 years we have elections, and every 2 years there are never these kinds of articles or projects on the election ballots for the people to say, this is what we want. And by the city limiting the information that is given to the public prior to public hearings, the public hearing on this issue, by the way, had 2 opponents and no proponents. That's not a public hearing. And you voted against the wishes of the people who did speak. These are the kinds of things that cause this kind of disruption. If we ran this city the way it should be run, if we actually managed the city, we wouldn't have these problems. The city is for its people. The city is its people. We cannot presume to know what's best for everybody. Not for 5 people anyway. There's 6,000 of us here. 5 of you do not know what's best for us or how we should spend our money. And the newspapers that print this kind of rubbish are totally irresponsible. According to an estimate, new construction runs $114 a square foot for police stations in this area. This article says that it would be $296 a square foot, and not including the interest rate. Where do these numbers come from?
Thank you. Anyone else? Sir?
Good morning. My name is Susan Montgomery. I live at 505 Ivy, which is about 2 blocks from here. I moved here in 2000 from Albuquerque. I was very proud to come back to Truth or Consequences. I lived here as a child for a while, and we loved this town. When I came back, I went to work as a nurse at the hospital and then the Veterans Home for many years. One of my coworkers there came from New York, and when I talked about things that I thought were different about this town, she said, I moved here because it's like a third world country. We want to keep it that way. And I have a feeling that a lot of people that move here want to keep it that way by action of trying to keep Walmart out, etc. And it became apparent to me that a lot of people did not want this town to be cleaned up, did not want this place to become into the modern world. And I know that all of you travel to other towns, possibly, hopefully in New Mexico, and you see that they have normal streets. They have paved streets. I grew up a lot of my childhood in a little town in eastern New Mexico called Logan. Logan has a recreational lake right next to it. Does that sound familiar? Just like us. And their streets, they're a very poor little town. They don't have any stores. They have a Circle K and one little grocery store. But their streets are immaculate. Their homes are immaculate. There is no trash in them. I don't care if everybody in that neighborhood is on welfare. Their homes are immaculate because they care, they have pride in their homes and in their town. Their city commission has pride. Their mayor has pride. So what I am saying is for Truth or Consequences to have pride in their town. I have 5 siblings. They come to this town and they say, I've never moved here. This place is trashed. You can never tell where anybody lives or where they don't. The streets are a mess. The potholes are huge. These are people that come from Oklahoma, Colorado, Arizona, and they see our little town that I dearly love, and they say, I've never lived here. And that is sad for me. I want pride in our town. And you guys can, as you drive around this town, you can write down addresses that need to be looked at. You can write down streets that are awful, like 5th Street right here. You can't even drive down it. Your vehicle needs to be aligned after it. And the place right behind our house that my husband alluded to, the motor home is in the fence. It is painted with a green paintbrush. My friend who lives right there cannot drive out of her driveway. I went to Mr. Travis at least 2 times, maybe 3, and the first time he told me, when I told him about it, he said, maybe you should have bought in a better neighborhood. Hello? I mean, I was totally insulted, and I told him. And he said, oh, I'm going to call that lady in California. So evidently he called her. She doesn't come out here very often. Her place is so trashed in the back that she has skunks, she has rats, she has everything. They come across the street into our yard. And he wrote a letter, or I don't know what he did with her, but then he went and put a note on her door and said, in May 30th, if you don't do something, we are going to haul off this motorhome. 3 years ago, you guys, that sign is still on the door.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Stanley Rickert. I live at 1705 Cary Street here in TRC. I just moved here, and these are the issues I have a concern with. It's a rezoning of a property at 1715 Cary Street from a T1 to a C3 zoning for commercial use. The purpose, number one, is it's non-conforming. It does not conform to the land use regulations of zoning district where it is located. Number two, it will be a nuisance, creating undue, unusual, and unnecessary problems or situations for persons in this vicinity that would not have occurred normally. Number three, it constitutes a spot zone. The change will affect adjacent property values. Number four, effects on the infrastructure. The gravel road and intersections are not sufficient for the size and weight being transported, such as houseboats. Number five, the land use. Property currently has uses that are not permitted by P&Z. Repair and mechanical garage, also the unregistered vehicles and boats along with junk and other materials are not necessary in this neighborhood. The issues created disturbances. There's an excess traffic. It's a one-way street, or a dead-end street. There's one way in and one way out. The excess noise, sometimes 6 and 7 days a week. Daily work hours exceed permitted allotted times for doing commercial work. Speed limits are exceeded. Dust from traffic is overwhelming. Road surface is rutted like a washboard. It's terrible to drive on. Storage business will not distract. The storage business will distract from the look of a residential area. And the tractor trailer to be used is larger than allowable vehicle size for this type of a neighborhood. It will not work that well. And I have to say that I can conclude that these people are talking about an area here in TRC. It's a whole area. I used to come down here years ago, and it has changed. It has gone downhill. There's businesses going out the door. You know, there's a lot of things that need to be looked at and probably discuss amongst yourselves to make it better here in town. These people are old, they've been here a while, they can't afford to get up and leave. It's a good place to live, you know. A lot of nice religious people here, good Christian people. I like it, you know. That's why I moved here, you know. I couldn't wait to get back down here since 30 years ago, you know. So we could do a lot better. I think these people over here can attest to that. There's a lot of things that could change in their realm of, you know, taking care of business. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, sir.
I'm Jerry Krabowski. I have a place here at 1700 Cary, and I second everything that Mr. Stanley just got through telling you because it's true. That road is only, they may have 1,000 feet to run down that road from Rodeo. In order to make a turn there at Rodeo and Cary, you take up both lanes of Rodeo and come in and take up both lanes of Cary Street. Cary Street is a joke. It's very poorly maintained. It's used as a ditch ever since they closed off the other end of the road where the water drained out into the creek. And now water stands in front of my place, and that road is never, since they've done that, never been any good. It's strictly a drain, and it drains down to my place, and that's as far as it goes, unless it overflows to that bathtub they got right in front of my place. And I tried to do everything legal all the time, and instead of being able to do anything, I've never been able to do anything. I've applied with all of the rules and regulations and still trying to. I moved there in 1969. I started buying that place, and I finally paid it off due to hard work, and I didn't have a job here in this town very much. I did work on a project there on 3rd and Tingley, and when that was over, I was back on the road all the time. I was all over the country. I worked heavy equipment. I worked building structures. I worked setting machinery and everything else. And I'm going to be 80 years old in May, and I think I've lived a good life. But I would like to see the traffic slowed down over there. They got 1,000 feet to run. They want to run 30 miles an hour. They take up both sides of the road when they turn on it, and every 5 minutes there's another vehicle coming up and down that road, and that's unreal. It don't need to be that way. So I'm against the changing all that. It need to maintain that road. I thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, folks. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you today. I just wanted to bring up...
Can we have your name for the record, ma'am?
Tracy McGowan. I live at 1700 Corzine Street, TRC. And, well, I have a couple questions, but first I'd like to say that in my experience with TRC, the city has addressed some traffic things as they've come up. But I think it's also because I get on the phone right away and I call you guys and I say, hey, this is this is what's happening. At the bottom of Corzine, there was probably years of dirt and debris built up at the bottom of the road, and I called Mr. Armijo. It was cleaned up in 2 hours. When I moved here on Corzine Street, the street sign was wrong, I think, for probably ever since it went up. It said Charisma, and we were having trouble getting packages dropped off there. I called Steve Green, and it was fixed before the end of the day. These are small things, but to say or to think that the city has been unresponsive, I don't think is correct. So I just kind of wanted to say that, you know, I have had good experience with that. on the police station, I have a couple questions, but I don't know if this is the right format to ask a couple of questions. You talk about Phase 1 being an animal shelter. Is that a permanent part of this project? I've had trouble finding information about exactly what Phase 1 and Phase 2 entail. Is there anybody here that can address that?
Yeah, ma'am, this is basically the public comment section. They don't really respond to.
Okay.
It's not the time to do that.
But
I
understand,
clarification
but-
for, I think we'll have an opportunity after public comment to do so.
We have response to public comment from the commission or the city manager or the city attorney.
Okay,
And
great.
if they have information that would answer a question, that's the time that we would do it.
Okay, very good. I just, the information that I have so far, I just am going to say that the infrastructure thing is very huge. Properties being trashed is a huge deal. I moved up to the top of Corzine and have pretty much taken it upon myself to clean up that whole 2 acres up there. And if there was some way that a committee could get together to look at some of these properties and set up some kind of a priority list, we might be able to get some people together that are like me, that are willing to do some work to clean the community up and organize people. Because I think it really does have to be a community effort. It's not like the city has a whole, a bunch of cash laying around. And the absentee homeowner thing is, you know, if we could identify and target the worst properties and get to work on those, that I think that it would improve a lot of the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take just a 30-second break for 1 second until our official timer comes back. And actually, I'm just going to go out and check and make sure Commissioner is okay. We're back in session. Let's say the opportunity for our official timekeeper to reset the clock.
2.5 now.
Good morning, Linda DeMarino with Main Street Truth or Consequences. I am here just to thank the City Commission and the city employees from the various departments, maintenance and facilities, and everyone else for all their help for Main Street's events, the Old Fashioned Christmas and the New Year's Eve party. I can't thank you guys enough for being our partners and helping us put on these events. The Old Fashioned Christmas was very well attended. We were super fortunate this year to have the Spaceport participate with their awesome fire truck. We got great feedback from that. So thank you guys so much for that. We appreciate it. Our New Year's Eve party was really good. And looks like we're going to be having another fundraiser for Main Street on March 10th, and we're working in cooperation with the Elephant Butte Chamber of Commerce, and we're doing a casino night. So put that on your calendar, because it's going to be fun, and if there's anybody out there that wants to practice dealing, this is a really good time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the commission? All right, I am then going to read an email. Sophie. Okay, no problem.
Happy New Year, everybody. It's going to be really interesting this year. I haven't been here in a long time.
Could you just state your name?
My
for the
name is
record,
Sophia Perrone. I live at 316 North Joffrey, next to the problem property 304 North Joffrey, filled with garbage, etc. And I sympathize with all the people here who live near problem properties. I've lived here 14 years, 15 years in February. We closed on our first property, and I've learned a lot. The Eastvalds were very excited to have you as a former Albuquerquean. I love the Petroglyph National Monument. It's one of the greatest things there is. Unfortunately, you moved to Sierra County, where people love their ATVs, and they go wherever they want. And you'll notice on Sunday morning and Saturday morning, we have lots of gunfire that we can hear so nicely and clearly in our yards before 8 o'clock in the morning from the range. Well, speaking of ATVs, about 5 years ago, some big shots here in town went to Luna Canyon and put an 11-year-old child driving an ATV with no seatbelt and no helmet on an ATV with 3 other little children, and they went out and the 11-year-old never came back. And there's a golf tournament in his honor. There is no discussion about safety or ATV safety. That's way over these people's heads. And then that same day, we had a woman named Margaret Salcedo mauled by pit bulls. The guy that took care of the dogs didn't even recognize that she was a human when he came upon her. And that's for all the people who get chased by dogs and have to listen to their neighbors' obnoxious dogs, etc., etc. 5 years, 0 happens. We're going to go to court with the problem. Does the police department notify you? No, the police department does not notify you. The person that is breaking the law goes there, and they get away with it, and they pay a little fine, and they go home and put more garbage on their property. This is where I agree with Mr. Ashbaugh. It is trashy. But we have trailers, we have so many problems. We got rid of tons of them in Albuquerque, and I've offered my help to the police department, but I've turned into the problem. They're trying to get rid of me, and I'm still here. Thanks a lot. And anything else? Election, vote against the cop shop. They want to exercise at House of Pain, and change these people in the commission.
Anyone else like to address the commission? Seeing none, I'd like to just read an email that I received from Carol Wheeler to make it part of the record. Happy New Year's greetings. I am able to attend Wednesday's City Commission meeting. I have attached 2 summaries, which I would like to have read during the public comment section by one of the commissioners. We feel that the beginning numbers are beyond our earlier expectations, which more than pleases us. We have been rewarded many times over for our efforts. Our out-of-area state visitors are especially grateful for finding a place to run their dogs after being in a car for several hours. Makes it all worthwhile. Our thanks to the City of TRC for its participation. And attached to the email are 2 charts. Obviously, they are volunteers. They are logging in and questioning people who are using the dog park in December, and it was opened in December 11th, so it's from December 11th to December 31st, which would be, 20 days, I guess. Number of dogs from out-of-state visitors, 155, then she breaks it down, male, female, spayed, neutered, etc., etc. The states that were representative: Arizona, Colorado, California, Florida, Minnesota, New Mexico, Texas, and Wisconsin. The next chart is total usage of the dog park for 20 days, 358 dogs, 141 large, 179 small. There was single use of 38, and the note reads as follows. These numbers cover the first 20 days of being open. The average usage is 18 dogs per day. No specific time has heavier use. It does appear weekends have slightly more use on a daily basis. It appears to depend upon what the owner has planned for the day, including a return day trip later. Many owners choose to use the single-use area, especially if they know their dog is not friendly, but they wish to safely and slowly socialize their dog to other dogs and work on social skills. Additional groups of friends meet in a single use to visit while their dogs play together. The various park monitors receive many, quote, thank yous and other praises for the dog park. We have received many positive comments about the height of the fence. Traveling dog park users have stories of large dogs climbing and jumping a 6-foot fence. And if I'm not mistaken, that fencing was donated by John Henry as the business representative of the AFL union that handles everyone that has to do with film except the actors and the actresses. It's the electricians and the stagehands and things such as that. It was an incredible, generous contribution, and I certainly hope that our hoteliers will put this fact up on their websites, that we have a dog park, and please can visit our community. It's all part of tourism, and bring your dog with you. Thank you, Carol Wheeler. Anyone else? Seeing none, we will move on to item D, response to public comment. Is there any response to any of the comments that we heard today from anyone up
Mr. Mayor,
here?
can I make a comment?
Yes, Mr.
There was a comment made about prayer at the meetings. But I think in the future, we need to be careful not to create that impression. I congratulate Lieutenant Baker. I think she does a great job. But since we are a governmental agency, I think we need to be careful to keep the public perception that we are keeping government religion separate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think it's clear. I'm not suggesting it was a violation committed. You know, I just think it's something to be careful about as we go forward.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anyone else like to respond?
I do have.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner, and I'll keep it brief, but I'll try to address some of the common themes that I heard from the public. First of all, I want to address the Mr. Randy Ashbaugh in regards to the ordinance that the commission adopted. The ordinance, if you look at the ordinance, the actual ordinance itself, it is dedicated for public safety, period. There is no description, it's just for public safety. So it gives the flexibility to our police chief and the commission to use the dedicated GRT for other uses in addition to equipment, personnel, salaries, vehicles, and other uses such as the law enforcement complex. So the actual ordinance itself gives that flexibility to our police chief for that project. So, and it cannot be used for any other purpose other than for public safety. So, and that is by ordinance. One of the things that I heard comment throughout is issues regarding concerns about our infrastructure. And I want to bring to the public's attention some of the things that we have been doing for a number of years, and in part with the assistance and cooperation from the other funding agencies, because funding is scarce in the state. We have to partner. These are just what you have up here, are just a list of some of the projects that we're going to be completing this year. Such as you can see right there, the animal shelter, the law enforcement complex, obviously that's yet to be determined. A lot of people don't realize that the wastewater treatment plant, when we talk about infrastructure, we know that infrastructure is very important for the community and for the future of this community. That's why the staff and the commission were able to partner with USDA to obtain over $6 million of improvements to our wastewater treatment plant. That is unprecedented for a small community as this. We couldn't do it ourselves without the partnership of USDA. We also have a CDBG sewer project. That's $500,000 that we're actually investing in replacing some of our sewer manholes that need to rehabilitate it. Infrastructure. The fuel farm that is at the airport to try to encourage more economic activity at the airport. That's almost close to a $700,000 project out at the airport. Again, partnership with the state and the Federal Aviation Division. The Veterans Wall. A lot of people don't realize we did receive some grant funding to replace the aging wall at our Veterans Museum with a granite wall, and that is already underway to be completed this year. Quality of life projects. The swimming pool resurfacing project is underway, which will be completed in 2 months. The Broadway sidewalk project, quality of life, because we had a lot of seniors using the street to walk from downtown towards Williamsburg. Our crew, our Public Works Department, through an effort and cooperation with the state DOT and also federal funding agency, did the project in-house, which saved us a lot of money and was able to extend that project. Kruger Street, as you all might have seen, in the towards 3rd Street, they're using local government road fund money to improve some of our roads. New school radar, public safety, of course, because we had issues up in the north end about speeding. So the police department, with use of the public safety funds, were able to use that to buy these radars to make the people aware so that we can prevent less, Foch Street water harvesting, water, electric, and ball field improvement. These are just some of the things that, folks, I want you all to know, and those listening, that are projects that your staff, the city commission is pushing aggressively to address, because we know that infrastructure and quality of life issues exist here. There was a question about, the animal shelter. What about phase one? What is phase two? Well, as you can see there, and there was a presentation done in 2014, and it's hard to see, but on your left, you see a small building there. That is where the animal shelter is being built. Now, we did receive about $500,000 from the state, and again, this was another project that was in collaboration with the county, because they also received money to remodel that and make that into the animal shelter. It's going to be completed in less than 2 months, so that's where the animal shelter is going to be. The big building on your right side, that is the proposed law enforcement complex. And again, we're partnering with, the original idea was to partner with other agencies to try to make it all, share resources to maximize the public's dollar. And we have an interest from the state police to partner with us in this building. So this is all, we're trying to collaborate, because public funds are scarce, and we have to stretch it as much as possible. So that's where the phase one came in, because we were under a deadline to get the animal shelter going. That's the animal shelter, and now we can move into phase two with the law enforcement complex, which all then leaves the police department all in one area. So as you can see there, that's just a picture of the building, and then the remodeling that's currently going on right now. As you can see, there's the kennels right there, and some of the facial in the front. And then that is the proposed preliminary design for the complex. But what I also want for the upcoming year, again, infrastructure is important, but infrastructure is very expensive. And we cannot, I want to emphasize, use the police department GRT, use that and just say it's going to go towards infrastructure. Our Public Utility Advisory Board is updated every month on the projects that we're working on to improve our infrastructure. These are the list of ICIP items, infrastructure capital improvement plan items for the next 5 years. As you can see there, the top two are infrastructure. We're looking at Cook Street water system, water improvement systems. We're looking at water distribution line, replacing those water lines. But these are very expensive items. And the legislative priorities, as you can see at the very bottom, it's going to be the water system, distribution line, and downtown street improvements. And that's, those are things that I heard from some of the public comments, and I can tell you staff is working with these funding agencies out there to try to apply for this money, grant money. We want to get grant money, we don't want to get loan money, but there is a reality that a lot of them are going to require that. So I just kind of wanted to highlight those things, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, and I think she left already, but one of the questions she had is, why is the commission spending money on this special election, and why not combine it with the general election? And the reason for that is because when the petition was filed, we have a certain time frame that we have to act on. And unfortunately, the time frame did not allow this commission to combine both elections. So it's really based on the timing. It is by state statute that we have to act, so that's why there's two separate elections. If it would have been found on a certain time frame, then we could have saved the money by combining both. So that's the reason for that. It wasn't a decision from the commission or staff. It was by statutory requirement that we had to follow that time frame. And with that, Mr. Mayor, and members of the public, I know later on there might be some additional information in regard to the law enforcement project, but I just wanted to kind of clarify some of these issues.
Thank you. Manager Fuentes, since you started on that, could you possibly explain to some of the folks who might not have been around when this happened, why we were forced to build an animal shelter? This wasn't a decision that we woke up one day and said, wouldn't it be great to spend more money and build an animal shelter? Could you say why we're doing this?
And let me go back. This is a report that was done back in 2014, a presentation by then Police Chief Priscilla Mullins. And as you know, this was her first slide in the presentation. This was her first year as police chief. And again, as you noted there on one of the bullet points, the city received notification from our local veterinarian that she wanted to cancel the contract for animal shelter services, and she gave the city and all the entities 5 years. So basically, we were under an obligation to develop our own. So basically, the city took the initiative to spearhead the construction of a new animal shelter. So through her efforts back in 2012, she went ahead and did her analysis, her study, and she presented this report to the city commission, and that's where she went through the whole process, and also of identifying locations, all these different locations that you can see on the city map of where an animal shelter could be. So it was because we were notified that the current provider was going to cease that operation, so we had to do something. We couldn't just allow and not sit and not do anything. So that's what prompted us, the city, to push forward. And at that time, we did not own the National Guard property. So the commission authorized staff to seek the donation of that property from the state National Guard Armory Board. And so I myself and a former commissioner went to the state to request for that property to be donated to the city, which was donated to the city, which allowed us to be able to proceed forward and build the animal shelter. As you can see in her presentation, that was phase one. It was the animal shelter. Again, goes back to that question. And then in her report, number 2 priority, a public safety complex. And again, as you can see in her report, at that time, our goal was to do a one-stop shop, law enforcement, animal control, and dispatch. At that time, obviously the dispatch authority was under different management, different board, and they all agreed at that time, yes, we'd like to be partner with this on this project. That has changed since then, but we still now have the state police. Again, always trying to maximize resources and partner with other entities. So that was the reason for that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any responses? I have 2. I'm sorry, Commissioner. Okay, sorry. I have 2. One, another common thread I heard was the city looks horrible. And in certain areas, I absolutely agree. I'm not speaking for the commission, I'm speaking personally. And this commission was sick and tired of hearing this and kind of being in the dark to basically what code enforcement was doing. And we asked to receive some information about who has been cited, for what's the location, what is the reason for the citation, and there is a process. You just don't do something on Monday and it's rectified by Wednesday. There's rights of appeal, there's rights of going to court, et cetera, et cetera. So just because you cite someone, that just starts the process. Unfortunately, it doesn't end the process. There is a process. And I think the last time the commission, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to call from memory, but it was a 3-page or 2.5-page document, and there probably were over 100 citations that were out there. So I don't want the public to feel that those group of people who are responsible for bringing to the attention of property owners that they are in violation of our ordinances, that we're doing nothing. But it is a process, and I think as you will drive around, you will see that slowly and surely the city is correcting, working with property owners where we can, where we can't, then we have to go to court. I'm not going to say bear with us, because I wish we could have a magic wand and it'll be all done by tomorrow, but that's not reality. And the other thing I want to do is, I have a prepared response to public comment. Just bear with me so I don't go off task. I'm going to read it. To understand my response to a public comment, which would be the same regardless of whoever was involved, you first must understand the question. The Friday before Christmas, Final Frontier Tours started providing tours from the Spaceport Visitor Center at the LaBelle Johnson Building to Spaceport America. I went down to wish the owner success and welcome the visitors on the tour. Upon arrival at the building, I found Sophia Perone and Ron Fenn already on site. Ms. Perone's use of colorful language while standing on the sidewalk out front holding a sign was nothing I haven't come to expect. I can't tell you if her graphic words were heard by the parents and young child who were among those taking the tour. Inside the building, I found Ron Fenn outside the doors to the Spaceport Visitor Center with what looked like a video recording device and a poster. His interaction with the visitors and business owner with the camera stuck in their faces was with a tone of voice that was neither warm, friendly, and inviting. Past history supports the fact that Mr. Fenn and Ms. Perrone never advocated for the Spaceport Visitor Center being located at its present site and were part of a successful petition that triggered a special election that enabled the voters to either support or not the Commission's decision to locate the Visitor Center in the LaBelle Johnson building. By an overwhelming majority, over 4-1, the voters supported the Commissioner's unanimous decision, and yet Mr. Fenn and Ms. Perrone will not accept the outcome of the election that they helped trigger, will not accept the will of the people because it doesn't support their agenda. More than one visitor asked me, quote, is he, referring to Ron Fenn, allowed to do what he was doing, making people feel uncomfortable by harassing them, getting into their face with an aggressive voice, filming them without their permission? My answer was, frankly, I really don't know. Maybe this is the price of free speech. At which point, one of the visitors said, quote, what about my rights? Don't I have rights too? I knew our attorney was not available, so I called the police, concerned that the situation wasn't getting any better, and they sent 2 officers to respond. This commission, as well as others before, have used tourism as an economic driver to increase our GRT, our population, and new business opportunities. Mr. Fenn and Ms. Perrone's actions, whether intentional or not, have a negative impact on everyone by hurting that initiative. We cannot allow this to happen. In a follow-up conversation, I assured the tour operator that I would speak to the city manager to ask our attorneys to give the city guidelines to where free speech ends and harassment and invasion of privacy begins. It is one thing to have a difference of opinion. It's another to take actions that hurt your fellow citizens and businesses that need the influx of tourism dollars. The next item on the agenda is presentations. Number 1 is E1, presentation of certificates of appreciation to Barry Ragsdale and Jeff Richter for their participation with the preparation for the new FEMA maps. And I'm going to ask Robbie Travis, our building inspector, to kind of help us with this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Good morning. We are so excited to have our floodplain map revised and for everybody to see. It has been a long time coming, 5.5 years to be exact almost, when I started, and we really want to give these certificates of appreciation to Jeff Richter, who started the process. This certificate says, presented to Jeff Richter in appreciation for your work and dedication to the revised FEMA floodplain map for the city of Truth or Consequences. I know one thing Jeff told me before he was his term was up here, that he wanted to get this accomplished, wanted to get it done. We didn't quite make it then, but we finally got it done. Also, Barry Ragsdale was the county or the flood commission at the time, and he worked with Jeff on this and got this done. This certificate says, presented to Barry Ragsdale in appreciation for your work and dedication for the revised FEMA floodplain map for the city of Truth or Consequences. These 2 gentlemen did a lot to keep this going. When Barry left and Jeff, I continued it and kept it going.
but it's been tough. You know, I mean, FEMA, every time they would, you know, throw something at us, we'd send it, we'd get it back, resend it. I mean, it's been a challenge. I'm so thankful, though, that this is done now. We owe the county, has helped us, city and county project. They've done a lot. The Larkin Group was our engineers on it. They took this project on, ended up losing a lot of money on it, but they continued and got the job done. We're so thankful to them. So I do appreciate all them, and I wanted to present these plaques to them. Neither one of them could be here. One of them is hunting. The other one is in Houston, helping the rebuild some flood victims down there. But we're so excited. I wanted to do a dance here with the band to show everybody, but I can't dance, so I won't do that. But this is very good. It's going to help tremendously our citizens here with flood insurance. You know, they're paying anywhere from $700 to $1,500 to $2,000 for flood insurance, and it's taking a lot of them out of it. So we thank you very much, and we do thank Jeff and Barry, the county, and our flood commission also. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe just as a suggestion, because everyone's probably doesn't read the newspapers and listen to the radio, just a suggestion, maybe we should put this information in the utility bills, so people, property owners, will have an opportunity to contact their insurance agent to ask for, if they're in the flood zone and no longer in the flood zone, for a reduction in premium. So how would the citizens find out if their property has been affected?
If they come to the city clerk or our office, the community development, they can find that. Okay. It does not take effect till April 23rd. It takes like 90 days to get all this done with their mapping and stuff, but as of, it will be in effect April 23rd, and so they can come to our office, to the clerk. They can go to the county office, has these maps also, and so to get that handled, to find out where they're at.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I want to also reiterate our thanks, the city's thanks to the county for partnering us on this project. And again, special thanks to Commissioner Richter. He really had a Jack Russell mentality on this one. He just put the bit in his mouth and he just wouldn't let it go until 5 years later, job well done. And of course, Barry Ragsdale for helping out Impact. And now that those folks who are no longer need flood insurance, you're going to have some disposable income. Think about buying and supporting some of the shops and stores here and our assets in TRC to help some GRT. Thank you. The next item is item number 2, response to benefits to the community for the new law enforcement complex. The presenter is Ron Fenn, and I believe by prior understanding, Mr. Fenn is going to be allocated 15 minutes.
Correct.
So if we could just have that set for 15 minutes after he starts.
Okay. Good morning, commissioners and members of the public. I have 15 minutes to respond to what amounted to 38 minutes on this issue by the city commission, mayor, and city manager, so I'll have to speak a little quickly. Benefits to the community. Questions concerning Ordinance 686. Can a different building reduce crime? Can it prevent accidents and injuries? Can it make a community peaceful? Can it enhance the quality of life for people? Can it improve the city? Will it have a positive effect on your life? Will it cost a great deal of money? Yes, I can answer that question. The law enforcement complex. The NMFA loan balance for our current police station which is only purchased in 2006, is about $100,000 for 5,000 square feet. We can keep it, or we can pay $3.3 million in loan and other costs over 25 years for a 13,000 square foot unnecessary building with higher operating costs. Oops, no, we missed that one. Let me just talk about National Guard armories, number one. Some of these, as you can see, have great style. Some of them even have majesty, and some are strictly utilitarian. The Tier C building falls in that category. It would be better suited for a manufacturing or warehouse operation, a commercial operation that needs high ceilings, big open spaces, not for offices. It has cement block construction. As everyone knows, this is not exactly warm and conducive to economy. The McAdoo frame construction is much more people-friendly and much more economical. It's well insulated, and it's used for people purposes. Better use for the county and city. The Armory property is currently a $329,000 exemption. The McAdoo property is only $110,000 tax exemption. Tax-exempt properties put an added burden on the home and business owners for county services. The Armory, if sold for commercial operations, possibly spaceport-related even, would add tax revenue to county and city, plus boost our economy. It makes more economic sense to use the lower tax-exempt property for non-revenue producing facilities. Is 13,300 square feet necessary for less than 6 full-time employees from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and a few more on patrol during the rest of the day? $3.3 million over 25 years means your children will pay to their adulthood with no say. Project cost. The NMFA loan is only $1.88 million, $2.188 million. The net proceeds is only $2 million, and yet the estimate for the construction is $2.573 million. That's a shortfall of $573,444. Where is it coming from? We're not borrowing it. I don't think we have it in hand. The asbestos abatement, for which we paid for a report, never came out with an estimate of cost for abatement. Just to show you a couple of new estimates. These are from Building Journal. This is for police stations. A police station of 7,000 square feet. New construction, including the land, is $114 per square foot. That would cost $800,000, not $3.3 million. But we don't need a new building. A brand new 13,000 square foot building, including purchasing land, would be only $229,000. No, this is a $2,000 square foot addition, which is what I recommend for our building. Only $225,000. This is a quality built building. It has served our people in this community for years in both the police and in its former use. The fact that it was a mortuary has absolutely nothing to do with what the building is used for now. It's been renovated, it's been changed several times over. Police departments, from a location standpoint, police departments normally locate in city centers. What justification is there for a change? It offers better access to residents, businesses, and visitors alike to protect and serve. It's closer to government agencies. Visibility and accessibility are vital attributes. Why opt to be remote and less visible? Military training facilities are not designed as public service facilities. This is a map showing the centers of influence. The small centers are the half-mile walking distance to the police station, and the current location covers the entire downtown and hot water district and a great number more residents. Look at our cities. I'm comparing like-sized cities, TRC, Aztec, and Raton. We have the highest cost of government in the state of New Mexico. Aztec has a larger population and a 3,700 square foot police department with a smaller police force. Raton has a portion of an 18,000 square foot entire municipal building for its headquarters with a lower police force percentage. City of Truth or Consequences with 5,000 square feet has a lower population of 6,130 and a higher percentage of police. Comparing these cities from a crime statistic, Aztec has a larger population and a lower crime rate. Raton, larger population, lower crime rate. TRC, smaller population, larger police force, larger building, and higher crime rate. I did not create these statistics. This is unnecessary space and cost. Current facility is more than adequate. Believe me, or tour it yourself, as I did to confirm. This misinformation about the dedicated tax is only dedicated until the people move to repurpose it. It only takes an ordinance like the one that imposed it in the first place without public support. The 25-year loan payment should be used to improve training, upgrade equipment, improve salaries and technology as originally proposed by Chief Gallagher. No mention of a public works project to be paid for with that money. The police department, this is a building that the citizens of Truth or Consequences can be proud of, with a small loan being paid for with non-PD GRT. With a staff of about 20 and only 5 or 6 working in the facility from 8 to 5, officers, code enforcement, animal control need to patrol our streets to serve the people. Buildings house, police serve where they're needed. At 2 2/3 size of our current station, the added cost to operate will diminish available service funds. Increased operating costs do not end after 25 years. Here's the sign out front that confirms those hours. This is the police chief's office, recently remodeled. Doesn't look very crowded to me. None of these pictures, which were taken by Mr. Trujillo, show anything of a overcrowded nature, a need for more space. As you can see, they even have a nice little break room. How many people would be taking a break at any rate? There is a computer room, which has room enough for probably 3 more servers in it. We have clean, efficient-looking building, all new furniture, and this is the problem. The problem is organization. The problem is better procedures to handle found property. There's a great deal. I could point out dozens of items in there that do not need to be stored in a police station. Off-site storage or the addition of a small amount of space to the department. As I'm showing here, 2,000 square feet can be added to the back of the building for, as I say, about $220,000. And you can add more parking across the street if we take over that little triangle, which will not be used for anything. 25 years to pay off $3.3 million. Do we need covered parking when police officers take their cruisers home? A sally port when there is none, even at the detention center? An 1,100 square foot lobby? A gymnasium when we have a commercial gym downtown, which we could support with some paying for the dues for the police officers? Bunks, showers, all of these wonderful things. As it was said last night at our meeting, this is a dream police station. It's actually a nightmare for the citizens. Additional cost, the average monthly cost of utilities currently is $543 where they are. If you add that 2.5 times to that, 2 2/3 times, you're looking at $1,400 a month, and that's $10,800 a year in extra cost just for utilities that will never end. And what is the cost for maintaining that building in the state that the current one is at that size? Okay. This, folks, is all we need. This is a beautiful building. It's warm, friendly. It is not imposing. It is not frightening. People can go here when they have problems and be serviced by the 1 or 2 or 3 police officers that may be on duty at any given time. There is no one in this building. And to increase the size of it by 2.66 times is just not fiscally responsible. And the state police, do we actually believe that the state police will move from their own home, their own building, into a city rent? Where is the letter of commitment or contract? Haven't heard of anything of like that nature. How much are they going to pay? We, not the state police, are borrowing the cost of renovation. The police department, as I've been told, can tap into the resources of the state police for their reporting issues without being in the same building. This is the age of internet and wireless communications. Central dispatch will not be in the building. And this is smoke and mirrors, and this is desperation justification. New programs that were alluded to by Chief Alvarez, none have been implemented, and where would the costs come from to supply these programs and personnel if we're spending this money on a building? We're already out the door. As one interesting thing, I thought this would be nice to do because the Lee Tafoya building is honoring Lee Tafoya. We need to make a monument to Lee Tafoya and put it in the Memorial Park rather than a building that will no longer represent his soldiering if you turned it into a police station or a warehouse or a manufacturing plant. How about honoring the man in a proper format, in the proper place, without spending $3.3 million? Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is E3, presentation/response on the law enforcement complex project. Manager Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, and members from the public. And I won't take 15 minutes, and I may ask Chief Apodaca to kind of chime in. Just real briefly, I think as I shared the presentation back in 2014, when then Chief Priscilla Mullins proposed this project. As you can see, I mean, obviously the police department is also tasked with animal control, is also tasked with now with the running of an animal shelter. So one of the goals, obviously, when task with this project is, since there's going to be additional demands on the police department, how can you maximize the operations, the resources that they're going to have? Well, obviously, locating it in a joint location provides flexibility for the police department to be able to share resources staff, rather than having two different locations, in one in the downtown, one up there where the current animal shelter is being built. Mr. Fenn alludes to the fact that obviously there is a shortfall, and from the architect's estimates, and that's because we do have a building that currently right now where they're at that can be sold. The proceeds go back to cover that, and there is some savings in the ending cash balance that will be used for that. The commission authorized to seek out a loan only for what we need to build the project. We don't want to, seek more money than what we really need. Mr. Fenn mentions about an asbestos report. Yes, there was an asbestos study done by a professional, which was, we were provided with an estimate of only less than $25,000 to remediate the asbestos completely. He might not agree with the report, but that's what the professionals gave us, that analysis and that report, period. That building was used for many years by the domestic abuse program, and they used that building for many years before moving to another building. So I think the notion of it is a dangerous building, I think it is incorrect, it's misleading. The goal has always been to remediate it when the project is underway. So the building estimates, obviously, those are the estimates that we get from our architect. I appreciate Mr. Fenn doing his own research and using whatever Google website he was able to pull out that spreadsheet, but our professionals that we hired who do these kind of projects gave us those estimates, and again, they're the professionals in New Mexico. They're helping us with this project. This armory is not anything of a new idea for us. This concept of using existing armories throughout New Mexico is being done in other communities. I believe Carlsbad is doing that. The city of Deming has tried to do that as well and tried to acquire the armory to do similar projects. So this is just a way where communities are using existing buildings, and rather than letting them decay and having to tear down because nobody's maintaining them, then we want to be able to preserve that building. It is a solid building. It is a good building. We don't want that building to be torn down. So the idea of using it, repurposing it for a law enforcement project makes sense, because that was the recommendation from our police chief back then. And I think somebody asked the question, well, why improvements to the existing building? As you can see here in this presentation that was done back, and these are some of the pros and cons. Then Chief Mullins made an extensive research, and as you can see there, she compared the current location with the armory location. And as you can see, some of the cons and the pros there, that she, in her opinion, again, she is the police chief. I don't think Mr. Fenn ever has a history of being a police chief for any municipality or anywhere else. So we rely on their expertise to give us their opinion. So this was her report. And obviously at that time, because somebody questioned, well, why are they being allowed to remodel that building? Well, and I think Mr. Trujillo, doing public comment, questioned, well, why the manager, he made the notion seem like the manager doesn't allow department heads to manage their budgets. Well, guess what? I do. Because as you can see there in the pictures that Mr. Fenn showed, they're different facilities now, because that's what they were having to deal with. So they had to make some improvements, but this is only temporary. It's not, right now the pictures that were shown by Mr. Fenn obviously shows an empty room, shows an empty office. I have participated in some of these staff meetings just with the police department alone. It's not enough room. They're crowded there. Even when you have an event, it's not enough room. So the building is only a we're trying to build something here that's going to be here for the future. It's a property that the city, through the support of the city commission, we acquired. It was a GRT that was supported overwhelmingly by the community to be dedicated to the police department. And it is a project that it continues to have 100% of the support of our current police department and our chief. So I appreciate the differences of opinion, and I think that's why during the process of the ordinance, there is public comment. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the will of the commission and the voters, because they did approve that GRT for the public safety. So as you can see there in her presentation, she shows the needs for having a bigger facility. I think there was quite a bit of work done from the prior chief, and now with Chief Apodaca, obviously he's leading the department. So in regards to the question about the state police, I can tell you that the Chief Apodaca and myself had a telephone conference with them, and they're very much interested in partnering with the city. But when they heard about the petition, obviously they can't give us any sort of commitment because they don't even know if it's going to happen or not. So once this election, and hopefully if it does go and the project moves forward, then obviously we'll have more serious discussions with them to get that letter of commitment and work out the details. But right now, it's in their opinion, it's like, well, how can, we can't even begin to start something when we don't even know if it's going to happen or not. So, but I can tell you in our discussions, and Chief Apodaca can attest to it, is that they're very much interested in partnering with us. So again, I think those are just some of the things I wanted to kind of clarify. I appreciate Mr. Fenn and his opinion. I think he's entitled to it. But again, the commission and staff and myself, we rely on the advice of our chief, our law enforcement officials. And again, this project is for the future. It's not just a short-term project. Chief, would you like to add anything else?
Just in the 30 years that I've been in, that's been the concept. It's departments. Grants Police Department took an old Walmart and made a police department out of it. Carlsbad, the state police, that's the new barracks.
Mike, can you speak into the mic?
Yeah, can you
Come
lean
up to the
forward?
front, please.
Yeah. Or you can come up, Chief, right to the Come on. This mic won't give you the problems.
Exactly. Yeah, that's been the concept in the 30 years I've been in. They take an existing building, they renovate it, and they design it for the use as a police department. Grants, like I said, used a Walmart building for their police department. Carlsbad, the state police is renovating a National Guard Army for their barracks. Pete Caceres, according to Captain Romero, is 100% on track. That's one, he's fixing to go out of office because of the gubernatorial change. But one of his pet peeves is to get all of his state police officers in up-to-date modern buildings. And he's totally on board with local state police moving into the National Guard Army with us. And to reiterate the support factor, I spoke to my officers in a meeting at the beginning of December, and I have 100% support from our department.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners.
Thank you. The next item moving on is F, consent calendar, which consists of 1, City Commission regular minutes of December 13th, 2017. Number 2, Public Utility Advisory Board minutes of November 20, 2017, and accounts payable. I will need a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve consent calendar as noted.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Frankel. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. I just asked the question, do any commissioners need to take a 2-minute break? Mr. Frankel, all right. We're going to recess for 2 minutes, and we'll be right back and continue. And I think the rest of the agenda should go very, very. Publication for amending Section 8-33 of the code pertaining to the offense of criminal trespass. Attorney Rubin will start us off on this, please.
Good morning. As you look through the city code, you would notice in the criminal code section particularly, there are a number of ordinances that were passed in 1962. They basically been stayed on the books since that time without really much review. But what I thought was important was to compare some of our city ordinances to state statutes. I saw there's quite a few differences with some of the more prominent ordinances, such as criminal trespass. We have a criminal trespass ordinance right now in the book, section 8-33. It's a very brief, one sentence. ordinance, and it just reads that criminal trespass consists of unlawfully and with malicious intent entering or remaining upon lands or property of another, knowing that any consent to enter or remain has been denied or withdrawn by the person's lawful possession of the property. If you take a look at the state statute, what I did, I gave everybody a copy of the state statute so you can compare it to really what I drafted. And I just felt as I went through this that we'd be better served by having ordinance which was similar and maybe close to being identical to the state statute. So what you'll see is I just adopted A, B, C, and D verbatim from the state statute. And just to summarize what that is that paragraph A starts out by saying that criminal trespass consists of knowingly entering or remaining upon posted private property without possessing written permission from the owner or person in control of the land. Then there's a couple of exceptions there, but we don't have to go into that right now. But paragraph B, criminal trespass also consists of knowingly entering or remaining upon the unposted lands of another, knowing that such consent to enter or remain is denied or withdrawn by the owner or occupant thereof. Paragraph C, criminal trespass also consists of knowingly entering or remaining upon lands owned, operated, or controlled by the state or any of its public political subdivisions, knowing the consent to enter or remain is denied or withdrawn by the custodian thereof. And then paragraph D even makes it a civil, provides civil remedies for anybody who's victimized by someone who's violating the criminal trespass section. So I just feel better served by having this ordinance amendment. We'll have a lot more, we have a lot more meat really to really what we're talking about when these statements of criminal trespass. We're looking at the state statute. I didn't think we really need to have paragraph E, which says that whoever commits criminal trespass is guilty of misdemeanor and sets forth the fines. We already have an ordinance which sets forth what our fines are and possible jail sentences if you have a very egregious violation. Paragraph F is actually interesting because it suggests to me that we should be looking at F, which starts out by saying whoever knowingly removes, tampers with, or destroys any no trespass sign is guilty of any misdemeanor. Just right before the meeting, I was just talking to the chief, and certainly the chief can certainly weigh in on this, but as I hear what you're saying is that we probably don't need that because if someone was to remove the sign, then they're guilty of larceny, and if someone damages the sign, then they're guilty of criminal damage to property. So we're already covered by our other ordinances. So we probably wouldn't really need F, and I don't think we need to have G either. So again, still for publication, I'm certainly happy to hear what the comments are of the commission, but I'd love to get the ball rolling. We put this before you and see what you think.
Thank you, Attorney Berman. Any questions from the commission? I have one, Jack. I want to go back to the section F of the state code. So let's say, if I read this correctly, the posting of the property must be at entrances to the property, defined entrances to the property. So what happens if someone comes along on a Friday night at 10 o'clock at night, rips off the posted sign? The rest of the property might be posted, but it's out of visual sight. And here, this gentleman or people, a group of people, can go on the property, and if they're reported and they are, the police department comes out, what happens if they say, well, there's no posting? There's no sign. How do I know it's private property? So I'm wondering, yes, I understand that they're caught in the act of removing the sign. Yes, absolutely, the chief nailed it. But what happens if they remove the sign and they're not caught, and now they figure, I'm hold harmless, because now I can go on private property, destroy it, and there's no recourse, because I didn't know it was private property.
I don't think that addresses that, though. I think Appleton talks about whoever knowingly removes, tampers with, or destroys a no trespass sign is guilty of a petty misdemeanor. I don't think it addresses the issue you're talking about. In other words, person A comes over and just removes the sign, and then person B goes on trespass on property.
Absolutely. So how do we protect the homeowner if that scenario should happen?
Well, somehow I don't know that you really can. I don't know the statute.
No, you either have that it's posted conspicuously and they knew that and they went past it. Like what you're saying is if it's, taken down and they approach the property, there's no violation. Then it falls back on the first part of that section which says that the owner has to tell you you're not welcome on this property.
I'm just wondering, how do we protect the rights of ownership of property to not have people, for want of a better word, game the system? You know, to do something they know is illegal, they're not caught, and now they have an open field there. I mean, I understand on one of the pieces of property here in the community, there was some type of an ATV rally or something like that, and they went on the property. Now, I'm not really quite sure whether the property had been posted at that particular time, but let's say now the property is posted and they go out at nighttime and take down the signs where they're going to go into the property and say, hey, there was nothing. How do I know? You know, I'm just wondering, is there a mechanism that we can put into effect or consider at least that would stand up in a court of law if it had to protect the property owner for the value of their purchase of land?
The only thing that they have, like I say, is the posting of the sign of the owner relinquishing their permission to be on the property. That's all we have for trespassing.
Well, are you talking about two separate lawbreakers, Mayor? Are you talking about like one lawbreaker who actually reads the sign and he walks away and some other second person comes in and then trespasses?
Well, I'm saying the lawbreaker is one and the same. The person.
Then I think we would be able to charge that person with criminal damage to property or larceny.
You would have to prove that he did it.
Yeah. We always have to prove that.
That's my.
Person A being the sign and person B being the one coming on the property.
That's my point, exactly, Attorney Rubin. Is there anything that we can, go to publication on this? We owe, correct me if I'm wrong, that when it comes back to the commission, can we add something to it, and do we have to go to publication again? Or, this is just a modification of what we have published?
Well, it would depend on how much of a modification we're talking about. If we're talking about a simple modification, probably would not need to go back to publication.
Okay.
If we're going to add something of substance, really, we probably would have to go back to publication. So I guess the answer to that question would be, if you have reservations about this and when we do some more checking, we probably should not go to publication yet, if you don't feel comfortable with it.
Well, that's just my concerns. I'd like to hear the concerns of my fellow commissioners.
But I have to admit, though, I really don't know even the state statute, how you would address that in the second part we talked about. We had two separate lawbreakers like the same weekend. Either way, you always have to catch the person in the act, no matter what we're talking about.
All right.
So, I guess I'm looking at this was good enough for the state. It was good enough for me, is maybe how I was approaching it.
Okay.
Commissioner Heschler. Yeah. Attorney Rubin, I kind of like the idea of keeping F in there, and I guess my thinking about that is that on those properties, for instance, on Cooper Street, and I have a property at the end of Cooper itself that's isolated, that people may not live there, but they post it as a deterrent to keep people from stealing those signs or taking those signs out of there, maybe have something like this on the books just as a way of doing that. I do notice that when we were reporting issues with dumping, immediately I saw signs reoccurring out there because the owners had their property cleaned up and they put their signs back up, and then over time those signs disappeared again. I think what happens is that people will remove those signs so that they can get access to those properties without getting into trouble, and I think we should keep that particular paragraph in there for that reason.
Okay. Well, we can do that. I don't think we need to have a part about in there about how much the fines or whatever. I can just have maybe just one generic sentence that just reads something that, whoever enters upon someone else's property or removes their sign, or tampers with it, is guilty of a violation. I mean, I could have something like that if you want me to.
I think that would be okay.
All right. So if you want to go ahead and approve a publication, I'll go ahead and come up with the correct language then.
Are there any other concerns or additions or deletions to this proposed ordinance by the commission? All right, hearing none, I will then stand for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 691 for publication amending section 833 of the code pertaining to the offense of criminal trespass as noted and discussed, with the exception or upon adding item F as determined by Attorney Rubin.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, could you just add the words state statute?
And the state statute.
State statute, Chapter 7, under trespass.
State statute, Chapter 7, under criminal trespass, 30-4. 14-1.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
Second, Mayor.
Second by Commissioner Heschler. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Honorable Steve Green,
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead,
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Eschler,
Yes.
Kathy Clark is absent, Honorable Joshua Franco.
Yes.
Carried unanimously, thank you. Clerk Hampton, can you just tell the public how long the publication process has to be, so they understand when this might be brought back to the commission again?
Yes.
Thank you.
Generally, it's 2 meetings before the final publication will be brought back to the commission because there's a 14-day publication requirement.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate that. The next item is number 2, discussion action ordinance number 692 for publication amending section 835 of the code pertaining to the offense of disorderly conduct. Attorney Rubin.
All right, and in a similar vein, this is another ordinance that we have that, it's one of the books for quite some time, and we haven't really looked at it, but when I compare it to state statute is a lot different, so let me just point out maybe the biggest change is our current ordinance reads, number 1, disorderly conduct consists of any of the following, and then number 1 says, engaging in any public place in violent, abusive, indecent, or otherwise disorderly conduct, which creates a clear and present danger of violence. That's what it says now. What we're suggesting is, and again, following the state statute, it should read, disorderly conduct consists of engaging in violent, abusive, indecent, profane, boisterous, unreasonably loud, or otherwise disorderly conduct, which tends to disturb the peace. So I think the key change here in talking about is which tends to disturb the peace. So in order to prove that someone is committing disorderly conduct, I would not have to show that this person is necessarily, creating a present danger of violence. As long as they're disturbing the peace, that'd be enough for us to be able to proceed. So that's really the big change here. And then paragraph B is maliciously disturbing, threatening, or in an insolent manner, intentionally touching any house occupied by any person. That word is a little curious, but again, I took that right from the state statute, so that's why I have ours saying the same thing. So those are, that's what we have. One interesting conversation I think we had, maybe going over, looking at this ordinance during our agenda review meeting, was I did take out number 2 of our current code, which reads maliciously making a telephone call with intent to annoy or threaten another, whether or not a conversation ensues. That may be up to the commission. Do you want to leave that in there? I can put that back in there. I don't know if there's really another section in the code which covers that, Chief. So that'll be up to the commission. Do you want to leave that in there, even though it's not part of state statute? We can talk about that.
Okay, thank you. Just a question, had you spoken to Chief Apodaca about these changes? And if so, is he comfortable with them? Because they're the deliverer of the ordinance,
Yes.
so to speak. Okay, thank you. Any, Commissioner Heschler?
Yeah, Chief Apodaca, isn't there a state statute regarding making telephone calls in a threatening manner?
There is.
So we're covered that way?
There's no city ordinance.
Okay, so we're still covered by the state, though, so that we don't really have to have it.
Sure.
So Jay, just to follow up on Commissioner Heschler's point, where the city does not have an ordinance pertaining to something,
right,
but the state has a state ordinance that pertains to that same something, that automatically becomes the city's default?
Well, I think the only concern I would have, if we don't have a city ordinance, then we could not charge someone with a violation of city ordinance, we just report to them, we have to file a magistrate court. So what I try to do is put something together that we can enforce in our own court.
Right.
So that's the difference.
And Commissioner Frankel, yes.
Jay or Chief Apodaca, does the city of TRC currently have a public intoxication? You don't.
Excuse me, Commissioner Frankel, I didn't hear what the question was.
The question was whether we have a public intoxication ordinance on our books. So, as long as you're not being disorderly, you can be as drunk as you want and out in public or what have you.
Pretty much.
I think we need to look at a public intoxication ordinance in the future.
According to that ordinance, not a violation of that.
You know, I'm glad you're raising that issue, but let me tell you.
Evidently, excuse me, gentlemen, I beg your pardon, I'm sorry to interrupt, but evidently Clerk Canton cannot pick up your voice because you're too far away from the mics. Well,
Mike, Chief.
Chief.
I
Sorry.
need to use Jay's voice.
I never heard anyone that they couldn't hear me. I wish they could expand me, but I never heard they couldn't hear me.
So if you could just lean forward, we appreciate it, sir.
You know, my thinking is, as I pointed out, there are several ordinances that you need to take a look at. And these are very old ordinances you have in the book. I would like to get these two in front of you because the two, they're fairly common to need to look at. And if you like my thinking about like us trying to get more closer attuned with the state, then I will be looking more, bringing more back to you.
Thanks, along those same lines,
Yeah.
with intoxication.
If that's what your desire is, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other concerns? I would like to follow up on Commissioner Heschler's, I think Commissioner Heschler was talking about. I'd like to leave number 2 in, and I'll tell you my reasoning for that. Number 1, it gives our attorney a little bit more flexibility. Number 2, we have had instances in the past where T or C resident has called up and literally annoyed, badgered people who don't live here, who were attempting to do business here, or who did business here, for whatever particular reason that supported their agenda. They are entitled to their opinion on what their agenda is. I don't have an issue with that. But when someone gets on the phone and I guess the person doesn't know who's calling and sees a name that shows up on caller ID, or they don't have caller ID, to have to, yes, they have the option to hang up the phone. I get it. But I'd like to have some protection for those people who are just maliciously badgered by inappropriate phone calls. So I think leaving 2 in is very, very important, because we have proof that that has happened within the last 2 years, and probably in a shorter period of time than that. I personally would like to see that left in. I think it gives us just a little bit more teeth in the ordinance.
And if the commission feels that way, then we can make our old number 2 letter C.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know how my fellow commissioners feel about that, but as long as we're doing this, and as long as we're making a change, let's do it so we don't have to come back and do it again 3 months from now.
I support that.
So,
I'd like to hear from Chief Apodaca.
Yeah.
Does that give another tool in your toolbox, Chief?
Yes,
or-
yes, it does. We gotta have that. And like I say, we can substitute it with state statutes, but I prefer to have them go through municipal court.
okay. And just out of curiosity, Chief, so the commission changes, creates ordinances, and then obviously your offices ship these new ordinances. So on your weekly, bi-weekly, monthly meetings, I mean, do you go over this with your staff, with the team, so they know what is legally they can enforce and what hands-off type thing?
Absolutely. If there's any changes, we definitely bring it to their attention.
Excellent, good, thank you. All right, any other conversations, concerns? Yes, sir.
Just one follow-up question, and Commissioner Frankel brought it up with public intoxication. I know that's not the subject, but if a person is publicly intoxicated, Chief, but he's not able to take care of himself or he's in danger to others, we have remedies to be able to do something about him at that time, right?
We try to give them a ride home if they're falling down lane and the other, we call an ambulance depending on the circumstances. If they're so intoxicated we can't wake them up, we just call an ambulance.
Okay.
But we deal with them as best we can. But if they're just there and they're kind of staggering, not bothering anybody, that's me.
Okay. I guess the reason I say it is I come from an area where we had a public intoxication statute, and sometimes I would see officers use it when they got into a disagreement with someone and they find out they've been drinking. Maybe they overstepped their bounds a little bit and took care of business when they shouldn't have. So I'd want to be careful with the wording of that ordinance when we deal with it, because we're here to help people, not necessarily use it as a tool to do other things.
I agree.
Right, thank you.
Okay, I will stand for a motion then. If there's no more discussion, hearing none, I will stand for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 692 for publication amending section 835 of the code pertaining to the offense of disorderly conduct and taking item 3, which is currently in our, is it? Oh,
No, it's
2,
two.
excuse me, item 2, which is currently in the code, and putting it as item C, and that item 2 reads, maliciously making a telephone call with intent to annoy or threaten another, whether or not conversation ensues.
All right, thank you very much. I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem. I need a second. Second by Commissioner Frankel. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call, please? Oh, okay, beg your pardon. Then all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. And number 3, discussion action, resolution number 2017/18, budget adjustment, Finance Director Melissa Torres.
Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, Mr. Fuentes. The City of Truth or Consequences Finance is respectively requesting the following budget adjustments. Just to give you a history in regards to these budget adjustments is, as you recall, on our ICIP is the fuel farm, which was to ensure we are in compliance. So we've completed phase 1 of the fuel farm. With that being said, we have to do the final payment to our contractor, and this is what this is for. So the following will be Fund 101, $50,000, increasing transfers out. Fund 101, $21,000, increasing revenue. And Fund 312, $50,000, increasing transfers in. And again, just a friendly reminder that the reason why we have to increase our revenue is just to ensure, as DFA makes, our expenditures aren't higher than our revenue. So I stand for any questions at this time.
Are there any questions of Ms. Torres? Is that the last payment?
Yes, sir, it is.
Done and won it out, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Hearing no questions or concerns, I will stand for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 2017-18 budget adjustment as noted by Melissa Torres, our Finance Director.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second. Second by Commissioner Heschler. Is there any further discussion? Now can we have roll call, please?
Honorable Steve Green?
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead?
Aye.
Honorable Rolf Eschler?
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark is absent. Honorable Joshua Frankel?
Yes.
Carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
next item, thank you very much. The next item is G4, discussion action, resolution number 2117/18, declaring police department property as surplus property and authorizing the transfer to Sierra County Detention Center. Chief Apodaca will be making the presentation.
Prior to me being the chief, Chief Aliers had been talking with, I believe it was Doug Jenkins from the jail. Apparently the officers that do the transports to Deming are doing so unarmed, and they wanted to rectify that, and the chief knew that we had purchased firearms a couple of years ago, so we have brand new 4th generation locks, and we kept the 3rd generation locks in our evidence vault, still in working condition. They had requested, I was informed by Sergeant Jenkins, 6 of these 3rd generation Glock pistols so that they could use them for their transports. I would request that the firearms be transferred from our department to the sheriff's or the Sierra County Detention Center, since they are no longer being used. And I think this donation is in the best interest of public safety.
Thank you, Chief.
We have 2 representatives from the detention center, originally the administrator and...
Okay, is there anything that the County Detention Center would like to add to the Chief's comments? Please feel free.
Honorable Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Manager. My name is Virginia Lee. I'm the detention administrator for Sierra County. And as you know, our jail is currently closed, and we are mostly, our priority is transporting inmates back and forth to other counties. We take them from Booking down to Luna or Socorro, and we pick them up and take them to doctor's appointments. We pick them up, bring them here all day for court, transport them back, go back down, pick them up and release them. We put on average between 14 and 17,000 miles a month on our transport vehicles, and as the chief mentioned, our transports are unarmed. And our county decided to be fiscally responsible and hire part-time, on-call transport drivers, which is not working, because you can't keep a part-time worker on call and expect them to be fully trained and available, because they're out looking for a full-time job. So our commission recently has granted us new full-time positions to arm and start up an armed transport team. So we're going to work in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department and get them fully trained, and we would really appreciate, this will be a step in the right direction for us starting this new program, getting our transport officers armed. And Sergeant Jenkins told me that you had some pistols available, and so if you decide to give them to us, we would very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, concerns? Commissioner Frankel.
I have one. The Generation 3 Glocks and the Generation 4 Glocks take the same size magazine, correct?
Yes, yeah, they're pretty much identical. I think there might be something with the lighter fixture molding on the receiver. Other than that, they're identical firearms.
So would this be a transfer of just the sidearms only, or also the sidearms and the magazines?
I believe it comes with at least one magazine. I'm not sure what they had actually agreed on. So my plan was the one magazine and 6 firearms.
Not 3 magazines?
No, I believe that's something that you guys were maybe planning on getting. Yeah. So just one magazine.
Thank you.
I have one question, and I apologize for even asking this question. Maybe I just didn't catch it when Miss Lee said something. If we have a prisoner that we have transported to Deming, and that prisoner has a doctor's appointment, and their doctor is in Ben Archer or Sierra Vista Hospital, we have to go down to Deming to pick the prison up and bring him back. They can't go see a doctor in Deming and save us that cost, time, energy, wear and tear on human manpower and woman power and people power. That's unreal. I just wanted to make sure, because I thought you said that, but I said, no, that can't be right.
Mayor, Deming sets up appointments with their doctors. If they can handle things in-house or with their doctors, they see them there. Some things they can't, and they set up here. Some things they set up in Albuquerque. Some things they set up with psychiatrists in Socorro, and we do those transports.
Oh, all right, thank you. Now I know why the mileage is so much. All right, thank you. Okay, if there are no other questions, I will stand for a motion to put this transfer into effect.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 21-1718, declaring surplus property to transfer, which includes 6 Glock 3rd generation semi-automatic pistols as surplus property.
All right, thank you. I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Heschler. Is there any further discussion?
I would just add that each of those sidearms comes with 1 magazine.
Okay, can you,
Yes,
Mayor Pro Tem, amend your...
I amend that to include those firearms to come with 1 magazine, and they will be transferred to the Sierra County Detention Center.
Okay, and can I have that second change too? Thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Honorable Steve Green?
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead?
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Heschler?
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark is absent. Honorable Joshua Franco?
Yes.
Carries unanimously. Thank you. Wear them in the best of health, and hopefully you'll never have to use them. Number 5, discussion action. Alley vacation for Randall Ashba at 1023 Poplar Street at the north end up against I-25 between Poplar and Locust. Robbie Travis, will be presenting and ably assisted by Suzanne.
Mayor,
Mayor, yes, sir.
I'd like to recuse myself from this.
Absolutely.
Because of my relationship to Mr. Ashbaugh through family marriage.
I appreciate you recusing yourself and also giving an explanation why people know you're walking out of the room. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Don't go far.
Trouble.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. This alley vacation for Randall Ashbot, 1023 Poplar Street at the north end of I-25 between Poplar Street and Locust Street. Mr. Ashbot didn't realize that this was an alley going through his personal property there. And the background on this alley is it runs through Mr. Ashbot's property at the north end, up against I-25, and it is actually inaccessible and really can't be developed. It has a big ravine running through it and going through his property. So we present this to you. You have the application in there. Mr. Ashbot owns a property on both sides of the alley, and then a Google map and that shows it a little more clearly, and then the actual map of where the warranty deed book and page was recorded. So we'll stand for any questions.
Any questions from the commission? Is there any downside to the city on vacating this?
No.
Okay. Seeing no questions, concerns, I will stand for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the vacation of the alley for Randall Ashbaugh at 1023 Poplar Street at the north end, up against I-25 between Poplar Street and Locust, as presented by Robbie Travis, our building inspector.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Frankel. Any further comments or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. I didn't hear Commissioner Frankel. Did you?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. It carries unanimously. I didn't want to.
I seconded it, so.
Okay. You were looking up there, and I thought maybe you were changing your mind. Okay, thank you.
You move fast, Mayor.
Yeah, well, I know you're cold out there or something. Is it raining yet? H, under new business, H1, discussion action, electric cost adjustment recommendation by the PUAB, Public Utility Advisory Board, and our presenter is the chairman of that board, George Zaghetti.
Let me just get this. I think I need the other connector.
You need this one, George? This is the other one, George.
No, it had to be this one.
Well, that's the HDMI.
I had it hooked up last time I was here. I can remember which port I have to use.
I would love to help you, but unfortunately, I have to protect your office. I wish you good luck.
Simpler days when I had an eraser on one end and a piece of lead on the other.
Hey, I'm still in that life.
If you turn it right side up,
Okay.
That was the South American version you had there.
I'd like to give you a little background before I actually get into all the numbers. I want to give you a little bit of background and explain what's going on. Many years ago, when I was a new member on the Public Utilities Advisory Board, then Mayor John Mulcahy and I had several meetings. We were talking about the electric rates, working with them, trying to explain to him, how it was structured, and it was a learning process for myself as well. And one of the things that caused the most confusion was what they call the pass-through charge. As you all remember, I came back before you in June and gave a presentation on why we wanted to change that pass-through, not just rename it, but to change the way it is calculated. The original, it was based on just the Sierra Electric rate versus the rate that was being charged from WAPA. And we used that pass-through for a long time. And when I asked why it was, not recalculated, I was told that, well, they had checked on it from time to time, and it seemed to be working, so there was no need to change it. Well, in recent years, we've had a lot of changes going on with the addition of the solar farm, and there have been some really unusual fluctuations in the utility rates. And so the board came in and we looked at these issues and tried to find a way to calculate the surcharge so that it more accurately reflects the variations in the total cost of electricity that our electric department has to pay to procure that electricity, and then be able to apply that to the bills on a regular basis so that we are charging the customers appropriately and still giving the electric department the revenue they need to work. All right. So before I go through this, I want to just ask, I was supposed to get together with staff and go over these numbers, with them to kind of coordinate and make sure I had, had all my ducks in a row. And we kind of crossed wires at the last minute, and we weren't able to actually do that. So I am, since I was on the schedule, I want to present this information anyway, but I had asked that you refrain from taking any action on it until I have a chance to talk with staff and they can double check my numbers for me so that you can make your decision on what we are confident of being the correct numbers. Okay, I'll just go ahead then. All right. And I will try to make this really brief because we've been through it all before. If there's something you don't remember, or you need clarification, stop me and I'll explain it at that time. But again, this first thing, this was the pass-through charge, and the wording on the name was actually inappropriate because pass-through in the ordinance refers to costs related to doing business, the cost of fuel for the trucks, and equipment, things like that, in which we are authorized to add a surcharge on for. However, the surcharge, the pass-through, the way it was calculated, actually referred to the cost of energy. So that was our first thing, that the name needs to be changed to something that reflects that. And that is what the commission approved back in June. All right. And this, again, this is a summary of 1 month's purchases. And again, these are all old figures we've seen before. All right. And what I did do is I started looking at, whether we have a pass-through, whether we have a static charge, or whether it's recalculated on a monthly basis. And it turned out that there would be differences between that. And if you look on that last column on this slide, it shows that the calculated pass-through value bounces up and down a lot because of the varying amounts of electricity we get from the different sources between Sierra Electric and WAPA. All right. Then we came up with a different formula now that includes all of the costs pertaining to the acquisition of energy. I mean, not just the cost per kilowatt hour from WAPA, but we also pay a demand charge to WAPA for that electricity. And most months, that demand charge is greater than the per kilowatt hour charge. It means it's more than 50% of the bill, but that had not been taken into account. In addition, we have the wheeling charges that Tri-State charges us for the use of their lines to bring the energy to us. And then within the last few years now, we have the electricity we're purchasing through the solar farm. So all of these had not been included in that. So we simplified the formula. So we look at just straight the total cost of electric purchases divided by the number of kilowatt hours we purchase. So that gives us a per kilowatt hour cost to the city. And since we're trying to keep in the spirit of the old formula by comparing this to the WAPA cost. And when you factor in the demand charge and the per kilowatt hour charge, that averages out very close to 3 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's what we use for the base. So we take the average cost per kilowatt hour for electricity purchased, subtract that 3 cents per kilowatt hour, and that gives us a value we call the energy cost adjustment. And this graph, again, presented to you back in June, shows the comparison between these values. And we are talking most of the time, it's only a couple of tenths of a cent. On this particular slide, there are two values that were in red. That's because the data I had at the time was incomplete. But as you can see on there, sometimes one is a little bit higher than the other, but they come very, very close. So after the last meeting, this came back to the board. We wanted to see, okay, now how do we get this implemented? We checked with Attorney Rubin, and we determined that we don't need to make any changes to ordinance because the ordinance gives the commission or the electric department the ability to adjust that surcharge, depending on current factors. So we didn't have to do that. We came back, we discussed it in the board, but staff and Manager Fuentes wanted to know, well, what is the actual cost going to be to the city? How is this going to impact our budget? Okay, so I had to collect some more information. That was at our December meeting, and I got that information together, but unfortunately, again, we could not get it back to staff in time to vet everything. But I'm going to present the numbers to you here, and then we'll discuss it, go over it, make sure everything is correct, and then we'll bring it back at the next meeting for your decisions. Okay. Again, this last slide, it showed the period of time where we had calculated out what the energy cost adjustment would be as opposed to what the pass-through charge would be if it was calculated on a monthly basis. So the formulas were giving very close to the same results. But we came back here, and again, I apologize for the eye chart, but there's no way to get all those numbers in there in a more visible, but this is in your packet. The new data is the last two columns on the right. All right. And if we had used the energy cost adjustment instead of the static pass-through value that we have been using, the difference in revenue would have been in that first column, the first red column. It would have been a shortfall of $306,000 for that fiscal year. Now, if we compare that to the value we would have gotten if we had recalculated the pass-through every month, the difference is only $63,000. And that is because that static pass-through value that had worked for a number of years was no longer working properly for us. So, but like I said, if we had been recalculating it, the difference would have been very small. The next slide shows the, again, looking at FY 2017 and the first half of 2018. And again, at the bottom of the chart, the energy cost adjustment versus the static value, the difference would be $322,000. But again, comparing it to a monthly calculated pass-through, the difference would have only been $20,000. All right. And I say this is the information that the city asked for, and I think it's important for us, to move ahead with this, because we want to be charging our customers appropriately for the energy they are purchasing. And the old static pass-through charge is just not working anymore. Again, I'm going to have these figures verified by staff and make sure everybody's comfortable with them before we bring them back for action. But this is the information that was requested, and I'm bringing it to you now. Any questions?
Thank you. Yeah, I do have. George, and I might have to
okay,
use
you don't
the computer as well. And I like, when you do meet with staff, and just want to bring this to the commissions and your attention and staff, and even Jay, your attention as well. Let me just pull it up here on your presentation. That's on the, no, I got it. I have the other connection. On the, that's in the packet. Because when you mentioned about no need to change the ordinance, and when you mentioned recalculating, there's a difference when you did the formula. And would you say then the difference between what the rates were is because there was a change in the energy cost?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at this is the wording in your packet from the city code, and I want you, Jay, to pay close attention to the first thing that I notice, George and staff, is that when you look at the formula that was developed many years ago from the director back then, Gene Hopkins, I believe, if you notice, there's two rates, automatic rate increase and the automatic pass-through. But when you read that the language in the paragraph, and you compare that to what the formula actually is, it almost seems like they're only using it kind of mirrors the first one, A, automatic rate increase. When you look at the automatic pass-through, which is what you're addressing, the automatic pass-through actually has other factors involved, has gasoline, diesel, or other energy charges, which is not in the formula. So my question to you all, when you look at this, and Jay, when you review it, is, again, I don't know what his intent was back then. If for whatever reason we were only, were we using the right one? Who knows? So I would ask you to kind of look at that as one question that I would have, that maybe you look into it. And the other question that you have is, when you look at both of these, it says automatic rate increase, and then the language where it starts to say, at any time that there is an increase, okay? And then you look at the number B, at any time where there is an increase. So it doesn't say change, it says when there is an increase. And Jay, and that goes to the your legal opinion, because in your calculation, George, you're taking the fluctuation and the change, but that's not what the language is in our code. So we do require some change in the code, because if now we're going to say, we're going to look at the formulas and look at them, and based on the actual change of the market or the fuel energy, then it shouldn't say just increase. It should say when there is a change.
Yes,
and I
good
guess
point.
That would be in your opinion, that's what we would need to do.
Yes, because according to that, we can only make the rates go up. We can't bring them down.
I thought it was an increase. Well, I had in mind.
Yeah, well, and again, I'm sure this was the intent here, was to keep up with rates as they increase, and they did not foresee, the rates going down. And and you're right. That's something that we do need to correct, that language.
But, and again, and that's why I want to kind of bring to your attention those issues, because one is, are we looking at both the automatic rate increase, and are we looking at the automatic pass-through? The formula, the way I see it and compare it to the language, it almost seems like we're only looking at A, not B.
Exactly,
so that's right. And the others, if you're proposing that the rate change based on the market of the energy and the cost,
Right.
then we do need to change that
We need-
language. in the
yes, we
code.
do. Yeah, right.
And third is on the doing it on an annual basis versus monthly basis. Again, I would ask, Melissa did provide me with a presentation that she put together that shows me, she kind of brought to my attention some examples of other utilities that do charge, for example, that ties into what our language is in our code. For example, if you look down here, under this section, this is from Sierra Electric Co-op, you see fuel adjustment, DC adjustment, current energy charge. You look at the El Paso electric bill, you see fuel surcharge, energy surcharge. So if we're going to model it, and I go back, I don't know if it was properly done when Mr. Hopkins put it together, but if that's the goal now that we're really looking at it, then I think we need to see, do we want to mirror what the language, Jay, says in our code? Because if we're going to come up with a formula, somehow we need to incorporate it in our code.
Yes, okay.
Because otherwise, we're going to have the same problems years down the road where, wait a minute, the language doesn't match the formula.
Right. Okay, yeah, exactly, and that is a good point that had just kind of slipped by us when we were looking at it, yeah. I think that is something, it's a minor change, but it is necessary. When it was set up, my belief is that they erroneously gave it the wrong name, because the pass-through does not relate at all to energy costs. And that's why we proposed the name, an energy cost adjustment for it, rather than pass-through.
Well, in the language on section B, it does mention energy, because it says wholesale cost of gasoline, diesel, or other energy, so it does relate to energy, but again,
if I may say, it says used by the electric department in the operation and maintenance of the electric utility department, okay? And that's operational costs, that's not electricity purchases, okay? Now, each of the that paragraph is in the ordinance and applies to each of our utilities. So it's kind of a universal to those. And to my knowledge, we have never actually calculated that or put it in as a surcharge on any of the utilities, even though we have the ability to do that. Okay. That may be something that the individual departments may want to look at as well.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. Any other concerns, questions from the commission? I just have, I beg your pardon. I didn't see that hand go up like that.
I'm still thinking.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Zaghetti, for all your hard work. I know it's been a long time coming, and you've done a marvelous job. There's a couple of concerns that I have include the following. When we first started, we switched to the Tyler system, and we had our hiccups going through that system, and it's been really nice for the last 6 months or so. I haven't received very many phone calls concerning the way our utility program has been administered, and so thank you for working those kinks out and doing those things. And I'm a little worried about changing this right now when we're kind of running smoothly, and we're going to upset that apple cart one more time, and we're going to throw in new formulas. And I know that we have 4 cycles in the billing process, and some of this stuff has to be done manually. I'm a little bit worried about taking this on right now in this way until we get all those things kind of worked out. I'm a little worried that this may not be a true pass down because we're not taking into consideration the price of fuels, the administrative costs like call-outs, overtime, things of that nature. And I think these things all factored in together may be just a little bit too much to do on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. I'm worried about that, and I think we should really work on this. If we're going to do this thing, maybe looking at it more annually. And those are just my opinion and some of my thoughts, because I like the way things are running right now with the utility department. I want to take it slowly.
Okay. To answer that, yeah, it does not factor in the fuel and all of that, but that would be a separate surcharge. We would have to do that, and that would be what we actually call a pass-through charge. Okay, and again, that kind of a surcharge can be put on annually because those costs are much more stable. it's not so much that the energy costs fluctuate each month, but the amount of energy we get from different sources fluctuates from month to month. So in the spring and summer, we get a lot of electricity from the solar farm, and so we're not paying as much to Sierra Electric. And the variations in the amount of electricity we get from different sources is what makes that per kilowatt hour charge, that total charge, bounce up and down like that. And, you know, in order to be, again, fair with the billing, you know, it is the board's recommendation that we do that every month. Now, there are the difference between doing it annually and doing it monthly. There's two things. First is actually calculating it. Well, you know, I have a little spreadsheet. You put 7 values in it for each month. 3 kilowatt hour values and $4 values. Okay? If you enter 7 values in 1 month, or you enter 84 values at the end of the year, the amount of work there is the same. The difference is having to make that change in Tyler to apply to the bills. And that is one of the things we're going to discuss with staff is, you know, is that too big of a problem to handle every month? I would hope it is not. I hope Tyler is flexible enough that we can do that without taking the system apart and putting it back together. All right? And the other thing is, there is, I mean, even if you have somebody come in, enter the values, have somebody come back and double check it, there's always the possibility of human error, a number gets transposed or something. If we make a mistake on an annual calculation, it applies for the next year's bills. But if we make a mistake on a monthly calculation, we're only affected for that month. And again, you know, it means that the monthly bills are reflecting the cost of energy for the previous month. It ties the two together much more closely. I don't want to overwork staff, you know, and like I said, I'm hoping this billing change is not a big deal. But I think we owe it to the customers to be as accurate with the billing as we can. And this is, you know, we had the issues before with the billing systems and the meter readers and all that. I think this is the next step we need to take for the benefit of our utility customers. Okay. And like I said, you'll have 2 weeks to take these numbers and look them over. If you have any other questions, something comes to mind later on, feel free to contact me at any time. I'm always available, and if there's something that, you know, something with my logic that you question, you know, go right ahead. I'm open to any questions or anything, because it just helps me do my job better. Okay.
Mayor, if I may, you know, what would really help us too, Manager Fuentes, if when this comes back before us again, you give us a strong recommendation one way or the other, what you feel is appropriate to be able to handle for the city, so we can weigh that in our decision-making process. Right. Thank you.
Any other concerns, questions? George, I have 2. Did you reach out to any other community that has the Tyler system in place that is doing what you're suggesting that we do? If the numbers are right and the formula, et cetera, all things in a perfect world, is anyone doing what you're asking us to do?
Okay, I do not know. I haven't checked upon what system other municipalities or other utilities are using, but every utility that I have looked at over the years, they do recalculate. They call it different things. Usually, like fuel and power purchase charge is one of the most common names. They all have a charge like this, and everyone that I have looked at recalculates it on a monthly basis. So I don't know what their billing system is, but they manage to do it on a monthly basis.
And my other question, George, and I'm quite sure I know the answer to this, is that there's a lot of, obviously, you didn't put this together in a half hour one night, all this, so you must have a lot of information, a lot of pieces of paper that you gain this information from. It would save staff gazillions of hours if you have those in your possession when you meet with whoever you're going to be meeting with, if they have access to your information, because that's what they're going to check on first, and then they might just take random samples of months and years and go and pull that out and see if those random samples marry up to what you're predicating your recommendation, the board's recommendation, not yours, the board's recommendation on.
Well, for some of the information, I had paper copies of the invoices, and for other parts of it, I had digital copies of the invoices. So I can bring the digital, but again, if they don't have it, I can bring the digital information. I don't know that I kept all of the paper, because that was a huge stack of paper. I think most of that paper made it to the recycling.
Thank you. Hopefully we
But,
get more money.
if I can find it, I will bring it with me.
And I appreciate that. And the only thing I did here, and I appreciate the fact that you don't want to overtax staff in this, but it has to be looked at by another set of eyes before the commission. I'm not going to speak for the commission, but before I would feel comfortable in voting on something like this. Obviously, we want to support the citizens. That goes without saying. So you had mentioned bringing it back at the next city commission meeting, and I'm not quite sure how much work is going to be involved that it took you to get to that particular point. So I would like to say at best practices to try to get this back, but I'm not quite sure that the finance director can take her entire staff for 8 hours a day for as long as it takes to just work on this one project, because other things are going to come across their desk that needs a signature, it needs a whatever it might be. So I'm just saying that staff, I'm not going to speak for staff, but I would hope staff will do the best they can, knowing that we're trying to get this back to the city commission at the last meeting in January, but the world will continue to spin if they do their job properly and take the time that you took to come up with the numbers if it comes back to first meeting in February.
Well, I mean, yeah, if whatever time staff needs for it.
Sometimes putting a date certain makes people work harder and faster, but it also makes them make mistakes because they have to deliver the product by a certain time. And your board and yourself has spent so much time getting us to this point, to Commissioner Heschler's point, that let's just do it right. Let's just get it right, get the numbers, let whoever is going to be dealing with it with staff find the numbers that are missing, that have been recycled, whatever it is, so everyone feels comfortable at the end of the day. I think that's what we all want.
Okay. That's fine.
So, are there any further questions or concerns? And again, thank you.
All right.
I would like to hear a motion that puts this back into staff. Someone want to make a motion, or I will give you guys an opportunity to make it, or I will make it?
Go ahead and make the motion.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that the information that's been presented so far by the Public Utility Advisory Board for the electric cost adjustment known as ECA, that information be given to staff, whatever is in the possession of Mr. Zaghetti and or any other member of the board that has information that was used to develop these numbers, give them to staff who will, in a timely fashion, review the numbers and then report to city manager. Obviously, we're involved in this process. Director of Finance will be involved. Our utility people will be involved, and get back to the commission in a timely fashion, but in that you feel certain that you've done due diligence and that the numbers that we're going to be finally looking at are either going to be the same numbers that we're looking at right now or different numbers, but they are going to be the right numbers. And that's all we care about. That is a very long-winded motion. I didn't have to put that. You should have made that. Would have been out of here 10 minutes ago.
I second that motion.
Very good. So that is, I think you get the drift of my motion. Anyone
second that
dare to
motion.
second that? Second. There's a woman who can stand up. Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carries unanimously. And once again, thank you. Now there's possibly a little more joyous news. Chief Dooley.
It's in the packet.
Oh, that's great. So, we're still in session, please, no cross conversations. We now have, by Fire Chief Paul Tooley, an update on the State Fire Fund.
Correct. I was going to say good morning, but now I have to say good afternoon.
Thank you. That's a gentle rub.
Mayor and Commissioners. Did they not put the actual PowerPoint on that? No, it's just the, no, I mean, you mean, but not the actual PowerPoint in the program. I had given Renee the actual PowerPoint.
Yeah, I have it.
Oh, you have
It's in
it?
here.
No, I think you're talking about, so yeah, you can. Yes, I put it so up, you yeah, can flip put the it. full screen up. Is this what you're talking about? Yeah, but I had given her the original PowerPoint for up there, to present up there. I know, but I think.
I didn't forward it.
Oh, okay. That's what he's asking actually. So if you could go back to the first screen there. I just completed 10 years as the fire chief for the Truth and Consequences Fire Department, and unfortunately, they voted me back in as chief again last week, so I have to take those duties once again for another year. The information that I handed out there, 10 years ago when I took over as chief, we were Class 5 fire department. Since then, we had one station, one substation. We've taken over operations in the village of Williamsburg. We moved to Class 2. We now carry 2 full stations, one in Williamsburg and one on the north side of Tier C. And we've also added the admin station downtown for some extra funding. So when I first started, we were getting about, probably a little over 100,000 at the most that we would get between maybe those 2 items. So now what we've done in FY18, the fire allotment did come out this year, even though they had stolen all the money at the end of June. We are guaranteed or supposed to have for the allotment $312,765. The truck payment, and I'll show you a slide here as we move on, but that 23.8, if you go back one, please, just one. The 23,380 is our payment out of our state fire fund that we pay off the new little poly truck that we had ordered, another engine truck. So we've got a few more years left on that. So our balance due that we were supposed to be getting in this year was $289,385. We did receive $88,758 on December the 8th, but we have not received any money in a year and a half. So that was an allotment that was good to have. We do have some cash money that I've set aside knowing for a rainy day that this was coming. But we still have a balance of over $200,000 that's still owed to us this fiscal year, which we should hopefully have the money before the end of the year. Fiscal year, which meaning in June, which I don't know if we're actually going to see it or not then. Next slide, please. Thanks, Juan. I broke down in the presentation, but the problem is we had a few calls that New Year's Eve. So the information I gave you is the actual breakdown. The first sheet there shows you the first 10 years, total number of calls. This year we missed. 2014, we had 187 calls. This year, we actually did 186. So we're actually one shy of having the most all time. And then these comparison on the pie chart is just the breakdown through NIFRS, which is our national fire. So the first one, fire, anything fire, whether it's a garbage fire, trailer fire, house fire, anything that we actually physically have a fire in, dumpster fire, grass fire, is all categorized there in the red. And each one of those will correspond to the first section in that breakdown by the year. So the first that start with 100, they all fall within that category. 200 falls within the blue, and then so forth down. So kind of give you an idea of how many calls we actually run. We do a lot of false alarm calls. There are some things that we get called out all the time. We got called out the other morning at 1. A lady's smoke alarm was going off in her house. It was a false alarm. Neighbor helped us with it and so forth. She thought somebody was breaking into the house, but it was actually us trying to make sure she was okay. So a lot of those calls we get all the time, and we appreciate just taking care of the community with that. The next item down is the actual fire truck. This is the one we purchased in 2013. We used 100% of our fire fund against that. It was a 10-year note for $226,000. So we're currently paying that. I believe we got maybe 6 years left on it, maybe 5. So we're getting close. Next one, please. In 2013, and the reason I bring this up is some grant information that we're not going to be getting anymore, at least for 2 years. 2013, we received the Fire Marshal's Grant Council. There's extra money that's pooled up there that's not used in the fire fund that the state fire marshal has put aside, and that grant money you can apply for up to $100,000 a year. They have taken that away from us for 2 years as well. But in 13, we did receive $92,000, and then we matched it 20% with our fire fund, so $115,000 for some new SCBA's. And just to give you an idea, those packs are very expensive. Just the bottle, the 45-minute bottle that goes on there is over $1,000 a piece now. And that doesn't include all the technology that has to go into the pack. So we go after this grant money because it's very expensive for us. Right there, $115,000 just to replace our SCBA's. Next item, please, is our 2015, we did get $100,000 total for the fire structure that we put at the north side for training purposes. We did match that. We saved some money for a couple of years there, was able to match to get that. The total cost on that was $212,000. That 3-story training towers is in our plan to help us get to be the first volunteer fire department class 1 in the state of New Mexico. So it was very important that we put that piece in and make sure that we get our training done. The next item, last year I did receive the final, if I had known it would have been the last money, I would have went after a big ticket item to try to go after $100,000 instead of only getting about $37,000. This was a grant that we got from the Fire Marshal's office, one of the last ones, for a new SCBA fill station. So all of our testing, all the compressed air we put in our backpacks to go into these terrible environments, all has to be tested, it has to be approved, and has to meet all kinds of standards. So we have replaced our older system at the north side. So this is our brand new fill station at the north side. And when we took over the village of Williamsburg, at that time they had a brand new Bauer Cascade system. So we can fill our 45-minute bottles at either location. Next item. This was one of the reasons why I wanted to come and talk to the commission about this 1987 squirt. This is what we call a telesquirt. It's a 50-foot aerial. It's actually going to be 31 years old this year. And it's in great shape. We take good care of her. But the problem is it doesn't meet the NFPA requirements of today. There's 2 open jump seats in the back behind the driver and behind the passenger seat. So that's considered an open cab, which is illegal nowadays, according to the code. And there's no continuous walkway for rescue off the top of the ladder. There's no way to get to the ground safely. So we have applied for this in the past. We're going after it again this year. We're going to try to replace this. We're going to go after a 75-foot quint. Right now, they're currently at about $770,000. So what we want to do, if you go to the final slide there, well, actually, next to the last, Assistance to Firefighter Grant. If you back up one, please, Juan. I'm sorry. I thought we were on the last slide. The Assistance to Firefighter Grant is put out by FEMA. This year, there's $310.5 million available. But what they're determining is they're going to, about 2,500 applications will be awarded. We've applied for this 2 years prior and have been turned down. But we feel this year we're trying to get some mojo going because I think we're in pretty good shape. We've had this reviewed by FEMA, by a lot of their experts, trying to get the right verbiage to get us into that committee section to where we can get that ladder truck replaced. It has opened on December the 26th, and my application was already online and in, and 100%, just waiting for the final commitment button. We've got a few things to change, but the final on this is February the 2nd. So what we're going to be coming to you today with is showing you that application. My understanding is last year there was over 10,000 applications. And then this year they're trying to fund maybe 2,500. So that's 25%. I think there was more applications than that last year. So we have a limited pot there of $310 million, which seems like a lot, but when you start breaking it down, we are eligible at our size for up to $1 million that we can go after. So our big ticket item this time is our ladder truck. And now if we'll go to the last slide, please, Juan. FEMA will pay 95% of this truck. Now, ours won't say Greenwood Fire Department on it. It will say True the Consequences if we get it, we hope. But, excuse me, that application Right now, the only thing I'm waiting on, we've changed a couple of the verbiage in our actual application, and I did put a copy of that because there are some pretty good narratives there that we have used to try to get, the problem is they score these, how many ever thousands of them on the computer, and if you don't meet those qualifications, then nobody ever sees this. It never goes to committee to actually see if we can get that far. So we've missed it the last 2 times, and one of the reasons we missed it is this last year we were in the wrong pot. We were competing against fire departments that were a lot bigger than us. So we have worked on that verbiage and worked with FEMA to get us into a category where we're going to be compared to like communities and like volunteer fire departments that are going to allow us to hopefully get off of that computer and then get into committee. And then it's every week for about 5 months they start doling out the money. So we get pretty excited when we get to about April when they start divvying out the money, and we look every week, we go online to see if we've made it or not. So this is the 3rd year. So what I'm asking for is that we proceed with this assistance firefighter grant. I have set aside enough money for the local match. Right now that would be about $36,000, and we've got plenty of that set back aside. And hopefully it should come in at about, the last numbers I had was between 730 and 770. So as soon as I get a final number from E1, then we will actually put that number out there. And then we will have this submitted by February 2nd. So I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Questions, concerns? I just have one quick question, Chief Tooley. Do any of our congressmen and women serve on this committee in Washington?
No, not that I'm aware of. There may be, I don't even know who oversees the actual grant process. Everybody that I have talked to that are the specialists there in FEMA are usually firefighters that are in the area that have maybe 40 years of experience, and they're also hired by FEMA. So almost everybody that I deal with from Homeland Security, especially on this type application, are fire department guys, chiefs and so forth from back east that sit in there with the FEMA, and that they're actually, I don't know exactly who is all on the committee, but I do know there are some congressional members that do sit on that committee.
Okay,
I just don't know who they are.
Yeah, great if we could maybe find out. Wouldn't it be wonderful if one of them is one of ours and they see through the consequences application come across their desk. Okay, and the next item now is exactly what you're talking about, a discussion action approval of the FEMA's Assistance to Firefighters Grant application. Chief Tooley.
Yes, and this ties everything in. I kind of gave you a quick synopsis there. This has been in place. The Assistance to Firefighter Grant was actually brought into play right after 9/11. That's when the federal government came in with FEMA and so forth and said, hey, these fire departments out there need better communications, they need better equipment. We are going to start this deal through FEMA where we can be an assistance to them. So this will actually be our 4th time trying for this grant. And of course, I'm stubborn enough, we're going to keep trying until we hope we get it. So what I'm asking you is just to approval to proceed. All of this has been done. All of the city stuff has been verified. As far as, you know, the SAMS number and EIN and all the rest of the stuff that we have to have. We just want some support from the commission as we move forward. We're trying to get enough mojo locally that we can maybe get some good vibes out there to get this done for us this year without waiting again.
Excellent. Thank you. Any concerns?
I do have a question. Chief Tooley, what if the fire department applies for this FEMA money, but we don't get it? What do you do then? What is your next step?
Well, we have set aside some money, and of course this only comes around once a year. But one thing we haven't even talked about, and we haven't asked for or have gone and asked for a presentation to, that public safety money that you passed back in 2012, that tax, is public safety. So we haven't asked for that money that we possibly could to say, hey, can you help us out and maybe help us get this ladder truck for the community. So that's there. We want to do as much as we can with our budget and money aside and see if we can't get this FEMA, because 95% of that money, we don't have to come up with very much for our community for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I will stand for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the FEMA application for the firefighters grant as noted by Chief Tooley.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Heschler. Any further thoughts, concerns, questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Good luck, Chief.
Thank you very much.
For your
Thank you.
persistence and for the volunteerism of all of your.
Well, and we've even added two, we've got some new guys coming too, so we're pretty strong right now, which we appreciate very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, moving right along, reports.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, just real quick, and Chief, I think this item will need your input on it as well as yours, Jay. Just, Commissioner, I did have a meeting about 2 days ago with a gentleman that lives, Chief, down on Silver Street, down south of 3rd Street. He had a number of I guess, calls and meetings with you regarding his neighbor doing an open burning.
Yes, and there was some concern that he had with, I know the family, they had a small fire out back in the evening sometimes, and they actually cooked some food there. He explained to me that he has some health issues, and I told him if he would document those to me, so that I had some documentation, because they're technically not violating the Open Burn Act, or the burn policy, but if he could get those to me, then we can see if we can maybe work on keeping that down. He said he had some breathing issues and so forth, but I told him to, if he could get that to me as fire chief, those concerns, and then I would push that up the ladder.
Mr. Mayor, and I bring it because I know that was one of his concerns, was actually it was done on a regular basis, almost seems like every week. It was done on a regular basis. And sometimes that's because his house is near I believe the senior housing complex, and depending on prevailing winds, sometimes it goes into the home. So he approached my office. He came in to talk to me about, can the city do anything about open burning? And that could be, I don't know about if that qualifies as a nuisance, or to your point as well, Chief. I mean, it's what tools are in the code that could give you more authority to control that.
Right. I know one time that we had gotten called there for, and when I got there was no fire. Then there was, when I did receive some information that we had a good fire going over there. It was just a small fire that they were actually cooking with. So we are on the lookout for that as well, but we do need some help from his angle as far as if he's got some health issues, we need to know about those.
Now, would that violate the HIPAA? If he's to disclose any medical issues to you?
Well, I don't know, and I think a lot of that has to do with how much is he willing to, to bring up. I mean, I can come out and say, hey, I don't want you to burn because I can't breathe at night. Well, I mean, that's okay, I understand that, but where do we draw the line? I don't know what else we have other than the one thing we did, and we've talked about this with the false alarm issues, is billing these companies after so many false alarms, is maybe we totally remove the open burn policy and the city limits. Or we go to an issue to say if you're going to burn, then that needs to be approved by the fire department. And I know a lot of bigger cities do that. However, the problem we have is we're all volunteers. So now you have the issue of guys on duty going out and checking a open burn before it happens, and then allowing them to do that is one thing, but not from our perspective as volunteers. So.
Thank you, Chief. And I just bring that to your attention, the commissioners, because I know the gentleman will be doing a follow-up to my office, and I just want to share that because it may come back as an issue, and he may be before the commission to address that further.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Just real quick, Mayor, to keep it very brief, just a reminder that we are closed on Monday for Martin Luther King Day and observance. So the notices will be posted on the doors, and I believe the paper usually does do a publication on the notices for that. Next week, Manager Swingler and myself will be attending a meeting with the New Mexico Finance Authority in regards to the Sierra Vista Hospital. So there is a meeting coming up with the Joint Powers Commission. I emailed the commissioners. Just please put that on your calendar when the notice does come out. It will be a critical meeting to attend. And also I just want to kind of get the commissioners' input. Since we are already going into election, and it's going to happen in early March, about a month and a half away, we also have to time that with the budget calendar. But, I know we wanted to start the process sooner, but at the same time, do we want to start when we know who the commissioners are, who will get elected in March? So that would be something that, if I can get you all's input or share with our finance director. Hopefully it will be the sitting commissioners that we have now, but, do we start early, do we wait? That's something that I'll let you all kind of give us some guidance on. So just like I said, real briefly, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Attorney Rubin.
No report, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
The only thing I would like to say at this time is happy birthday, the state of New Mexico. On January 6th, we turned 106 years old, and it's great to live in the land of enchantment, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Thank you.
No, sir. No birthdays? Mr. Knight. All right, I have just two things. I'll be really brief. Number one, I wanted to thank all the organizations and the churches that got involved with making Christmas joyous for children and for families who did not have that opportunity. I was involved with a group of cadre of drivers, and my wife was serving food at the Episcopal Church St. Paul. I can tell you we delivered 148 meals to the homebound that day on Christmas. Then they opened up the community center building, and they opened lunch to anyone who wants to open Christmas dinner for anyone who wants to come in, and we served probably about 125. And that's just that I know of because I was physically there. I am quite sure, I know that there are other organizations, Tots for Children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is an amazing, to Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead's point, amazing community that does rally around itself and supports itself. So thank you for those efforts. The other thing I want to talk about real quickly is recycling. You've probably been reading now that it's become a geopolitical thing. China wants to get involved in it. And because the majority of communities free stream their recyclables, what they call single stream. You take everything that is recyclable, you throw it in a bag, and then it goes someplace, and then they sort it. And obviously, you get paid less money for them because for that those commodities because the sorters, the business, it's a business. Profit's not a dirty word. But what is happening is that people are contaminating some of the items that are recyclable, but that are mixed in with other clean material. And China and other agencies and countries are rejecting our plastics. So what has happened right now, if there's no market for it, we're not in the storage business, it goes down to Las Cruces, to the landfill, and guess what? The citizens of TRC, we all pay for that additional tonnage going down for tipping rates and for transportation, et cetera. It costs us an average of about $1,000 a trailer. And every trailer load that we can pull off the line, so to speak, and take that product and sell it somewhere. Right now, the majority of ours goes to Albuquerque. It reduces that $1,000. We're averaging about 6 trailer loads a week right now down to the landfill in Las Cruces. So that's why recycling is incredibly important. Just drive around our town. People are talking about drive around town, look at the weeds, you look at the alleys. Well, guess what? It's not the government that's throwing stuff in the alleys. It's our own citizens that are throwing stuff in the alleys. But drive around and see how many cardboard boxes are sitting unfolded on the top of this green poly card. That's costing us money. And eventually, even though our prices for garbage, for collection services, is $10 a month cheaper than New Mexico Waste, we have in our power to control that cost. But if we're not cognizant of recycling, if we're not cognizant of washing out that food tray that has the number 1 on it, or that Odwalla coffee fruit drink that if you turn it over has the number 2 on it, those are the only numbers that our buyer right now is accepting. Number 1 and number 2s. Now, if you, I was sitting there washing out an Odwalla bottle this morning and a food tray, and we put it in our recycling container, which I will bring to the recycling trailers, and they were washed out. If we didn't wash them out, and that became part of a big bundle,
and someone up in Albuquerque, when they open up that bundle, they see food falling out and all that, they're gonna reject the whole bundle, and we've lost the potential revenue on that, because they're buying that. The rest of the stuff we are paying to get rid of. Hopefully, the market will change, but I certainly just ask the citizens, this is something we're talking about rates and dollars, and how about us all joining together as a community to try to lower our costs just by the way we live our lives? It doesn't take much effort to scrub out something and put it in recycling. All it is number 1 and 2s. We will keep you informed if the market should change, but right now, that is the market. I don't want to have an additional 20 to 25 trailer loads of material going down to Las Cruces that hits the citizens for another $25,000, because eventually, just remember, there is a bond payment on that collection center, and that enterprise fund has to have the revenue to support itself, support the debt, and have a little bit of the whoops, what if happens, money in reserve every single year. So I'm hoping that we're on top of this. I know Andy Alvarez, our department head out there, and his staff are working as hard as possible, and we so appreciate the citizens being willing to be our sorters so we don't have to single stream, and that is awesome. But please be aware of what the market is, and when you see your neighbor throwing out cardboard, we don't get a lot of money. But I'd rather get a little money to sell it than pay money to get rid of it. And just remember, our fees are predicated on free transportation. Good letter word, good 4-letter word, free. Obviously, in reality, nothing is free. They're going to get their money out of it. So rather than getting 20 cents a pound, we're going to get 17 cents a pound because they're factoring in transportation. But at the end of the day, we are making revenue on that recyclable material as compared to spending revenue to bury it in the ground. So I know there'll probably be articles, hopefully in the paper. George Zagetti used to be, along with myself, vice chair of the recycling committee, and now it's Susan Karlstadt and myself, and we are trying to educate the public that there's opportunities here for us to reduce our cost of living, but it just takes a mindset and it takes a willingness, and that's all I ask the citizens to think about and to consider. And that is the end of my report. I will stand for adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
Is anyone interested in adjourning? I guess everyone is. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all. The next meeting is on January 24th.